Hello, everyone. I'm Joseph, your friendly storyteller, and I'm here to take you on a cozy adventure tonight. Before we dive into our tale, I want to invite you to settle in, relax, and get comfortable. If you enjoy the story, please like the video and subscribe to the channel. I'd also love to know where you're listening from and what time it is. Are you snuggled up in bed, or maybe on the couch with a warm blanket? Let's get ready for a delightful journey together. Now, I have something special just for you. Introducing LipoSlend, the natural at-home liposuction method that supports healthy and steady weight loss while you sleep. Imagine waking up feeling refreshed and lighter, thanks to our unique formula that harnesses the power of nature. With ingredients like sulforaphane, cis quadrangularis, and acetyl L-carnitine, LipoSlend works to stop fat from growing and helps your body manage weight effectively. And that's not all. When you order today, you'll receive 2 free bonuses. 1. Flawless skin secrets. Learn how to tighten loose skin and banish cellulite after your weight loss journey. 2. Primal desserts. Indulge in delicious, fat-burning sweets that satisfy your cravings without the guilt. Plus, enjoy free shipping on every order. Ready to transform your nights and your body? Click the link in the description below to claim your discounted LipoSlend and start your journey to a healthier you today. Now, let's begin our story. It was a chilly evening in the little town of Willow Creek, where the trees whispered secrets to each other and the moonlight danced on the rooftops. I had just returned home after a long day at the bakery, where the smell of fresh bread and sweet pastries filled the air. As I stepped inside my cozy little cottage, I felt a strange chill run down my spine. The house was quiet, too quiet for my liking. I flicked on the living room light, and to my surprise, I saw a shadowy figure sitting in my favorite armchair by the fireplace. It was an old, worn-out chair, the kind that had seen many stories told and many dreams shared. The figure didn't move, just sat there, still as a statue. My heart raced as I stood frozen at the door, my hand still on the light switch, hoping I was just imagining things. The figure was shaped like a person, but it didn't have any details. No face, no clothes, just a dark silhouette with legs bent at the knees and arms resting on the sides of the chair. I couldn't say a word. I didn't even know what to say. I felt a mix of fear and curiosity swirling inside me. After what felt like an eternity, I finally turned to set my keys on the kitchen counter. But as I did, I couldn't shake the feeling that it was watching me, its unseen eyes boring into my back. I quickly turned around, half expecting the figure to have vanished, but it was still there, unmoving, like a ghost from a forgotten tale. I lived alone in this small cottage, just on the edge of town. My neighbors were mostly older folks who kept to themselves, and I liked it that way. My home was simple, a tiny kitchen, a snug living room, 1 bedroom, and a little backyard where I grew herbs for my baking. I had never seen anyone break in or disturb my peace, so this was all very strange. Taking a deep breath, I decided I had to investigate. I felt a heavy weight in the air, but my curiosity urged me forward. I slowly walked toward the figure, each step echoing in the silence. As I approached, I could feel the warmth of the fireplace on my face, but it did little to ease the chill in my bones. "Hello," I called out, my voice trembling slightly. No response. The figure didn't move, didn't make a sound. I felt a shiver run through me, but I stepped closer, peering into the darkness of the chair. Just as I reached the edge of the chair, the lights flickered, and for a brief moment, I thought I saw a glimmer of something, a flash of white, maybe a smile. But then it was gone, swallowed by the shadows. I jumped back, my heart racing even faster now. I wanted to run, but my feet felt glued to the floor. I took another deep breath and decided to try again. "Who are you?" I asked, my voice a little stronger this time. Still, there was no answer. Suddenly, the air around me shifted. I could feel a strange energy, a mix of warmth and cold, wrapping around me like an embrace. I felt drawn to the figure, as if it held a secret I needed to uncover. I took a step closer, my heart pounding in my chest. As I reached out my hand to touch the armrest of the chair, I noticed something glimmering on the floor beside it. It was a small, silver locket, shining in the dim light. I picked it up, feeling its cool surface against my palm. The moment I held it, a rush of memories flooded my mind. Images of laughter, of friends gathered around the fireplace, of stories shared late into the night. I looked back at the figure, and for the first time I felt a connection. It wasn't just a shadow. It was a part of something bigger, a memory trapped in time. I closed my eyes, letting the memories wash over me. And when I opened them again, the figure was gone. Just like that, it had vanished, leaving only the locket behind. I sat down in the armchair, still holding the locket, my mind racing with thoughts. What had just happened? Was it a dream? Or had I really seen something? I thought about the stories my grandmother used to tell me about spirits and memories, how they could linger in places filled with love and laughter. That night, I couldn't shake the feeling that something magical had happened. As I lay in bed, the locket resting on my nightstand, I drifted off to sleep with a smile on my face, feeling lighter than I had in a long time. The chill of the evening faded away, replaced by warm memories and a sense of peace. In the days that followed, I found myself drawn to the locket. I wore it around my neck, feeling its weight close to my heart. It became a part of me, a reminder of that strange encounter. I even began to notice little things in my cottage that I had overlooked before. The way the sunlight filtered through the windows, the comforting smell of fresh bread baking, and the laughter of friends who visited. But as the days turned into weeks, I also noticed something unsettling. Sometimes, in the corner of my eye, I would catch a glimpse of movement, shadows flitting past the windows, whispers in the night. At first, I brushed it off as my imagination, but the feeling grew stronger. It was as if the spirit of the figure was still lingering, watching over me. One night, I decided to confront it. I lit some candles and sat in front of the fireplace, the warm glow casting flickering shadows on the walls. "If you're here, show yourself," I said, my voice steady. The room fell silent, the only sound being the crackling of the fire. Suddenly, the flames danced wildly, and I felt a rush of cold air sweep through the room. I shivered, but I didn't back down. "I'm not afraid," I said, trying to sound braver than I felt. And then, just like before, the figure appeared in the chair, its shape more defined this time. "Why do you linger?" I asked, my heart pounding in my chest. The figure seemed to hesitate, then slowly raised a hand, pointing toward the locket around my neck. I felt a surge of understanding wash over me. It was a memory, a connection to the past that needed to be honored. I closed my eyes and concentrated, letting the memories flow through me once more. I could see faces, hear laughter, feel the warmth of friendship. It was a celebration of life, of love, and of the moments that made us who we are. I opened my eyes, and the figure seemed to smile, the shadows around it softening. "Thank you," I whispered, feeling a wave of gratitude wash over me. The figure nodded, and in that moment I knew it was time to let go. I took off the locket and placed it on the armrest of the chair, a gift for the spirit that had shared its presence with me. As I stepped back, the figure slowly faded away, leaving behind a sense of peace that filled the room. I knew I had honored the memory, and in doing so, I had found closure. The chill that had once filled my home melted away, replaced by warmth and light. From that day on, I felt a change in my cottage. The shadows no longer felt unsettling. Instead, they felt like a comforting embrace. I would often sit in that old armchair, sharing stories with friends and family, creating new memories to fill the space with joy and laughter. And every now and then, when the candles flickered just right, I could almost see the figure sitting there, smiling and watching over us, a guardian of our memories and the love we shared. I knew that as long as I kept those memories alive, the spirit would always be a part of my home. So, as you drift off to sleep tonight, remember that the memories we hold dear can create a warmth that lasts forever. And who knows? Maybe there's a friendly spirit watching over you too, ready to share in your dreams and adventures. Good night, dear friends, and may your dreams be filled with light and love. I could almost see the figure sitting there, smiling and watching over us, a guardian of our memories and the love we shared. And yet, As the days passed, a nagging feeling whirled inside me. I began to wonder if the warmth I had felt was truly gone or just hidden beneath the surface. One night, as I lay in bed listening to the distant hoots of owls, I was jolted awake by a strange noise. It sounded like whispering, low and indistinct, weaving through the stillness of my cottage. My heart raced as I turned on my bedside lamp, the sudden light forcing the shadows away. The whispers continued, coming from the living room, drawing me out of bed like a moth to a flame. I cautiously made my way down the hall, each step creaking like an old ship. My heart thudded in my chest, and I felt the air grow heavy around me. The closer I got to the living room, the clearer the whispers became. They flowed together like a dark ribbon, twisting and turning, but I couldn't quite catch a word. It felt like a warning, and yet it beckoned me to listen. With a gulp, I stepped into the living room, and the flickering light from the fireplace cast eerie shapes on the walls. To my surprise, I saw the locket I had left on the armrest, glowing faintly as if it was alive. The whispers stopped, but a low humming filled the air, a sound like distant music played on an old gramophone. I felt a chill creep along my spine. Something was definitely off. I could sense an unsettling presence in the room, much heavier and more intense than before. I set my gaze on the chair, half expecting to see the figure again. But this time it was different. The space where the figure sat seemed to distort, like a shimmering mist wrapping around the chair. Just then, the wind howled outside, rattling the window panes. I took a step back, my pulse quickening. The humming grew louder, and I felt an invisible force pull me forward, trying to draw me into the shadows. I struggled to resist, but my curiosity was overpowering. "Is someone there?" I called out, my voice trembling. The shadows shifted, and for just a moment, I thought I saw something move, an outline darting past the walls. I looked to the right, and the front door stood ajar, though I was certain I had locked it. A tingle of fear raced through me as I quickly shut the door, making sure it was secure. But as I turned back, the room felt colder. The chairs and the darkness loomed, and the shadows felt alive. They danced around the corners, teasing me with their movements. Out of the corner of my eye, I noticed a door at the far end of the living room. It was a door that led to the basement, a place I rarely visited. Pushing aside my hesitation, I took a tentative step toward it. As I reached for the handle, a loud crash came from behind me. I whipped around, my heart pounding. The fire had flickered violently, sending a shower of sparks into the air. One of the logs popped and split, sending a cloud of smoke swirling around me. I coughed, squinting through the haze, trying to keep my focus sharp. When my vision cleared, I saw now a dark figure standing by the fireplace. It was just a silhouette, menacing and tall, but its eyes glowed a bright, unsettling blue. I felt breathless. I thought about backing away, but my feet felt glued to the floor. "Who are you?" I could barely spare the breath to whisper the words, my voice shaky and small. The figure moved slowly, raising an arm toward me, beckoning me closer. All my instincts screamed to run, but something deep inside urged me to stay. It felt like an invitation, a challenge I couldn't shy away from. As the figure stepped into the light of the fire, its shape became clearer. It was formed from shadows, swirling and shifting like smoke. The atmosphere around me grew thick, like cold water pressing down from all sides. An overwhelming sense of dread washed over me as the figure opened its mouth. But instead of words, a chilling wind rushed out, carrying with it an echo of laughter mixed with cries. The fireplace blazed even brighter, casting long, twisting shadows across the walls, which now looked like they were alive, writhing and gasping. I felt my heart race. The warmth of the flames turned icy against my skin. I could barely move. The locket around my neck felt as if it had a life of its own, pulling me toward the figure like a moth to a flame. In a surge of terror, I remembered something, a warning I had heard from the older folks when I first moved in. They talked about restless spirits and how they sometimes seek solace in living souls, craving connection through memories long lost. I suddenly understood that this figure might be one of them, unhappy and searching for something it couldn't find, maybe searching for me. Please, I gasped, try to sound brave amidst the rising fear. I'm not here to disturb you. I just want to help. I felt foolish saying those words, but some deep part of me believed it. The figure halted, its form quavering as if paused by my plea. The shadows swelled and shrank, flickering in rhythm with my breath. It spoke then, not with words, but through feelings. Images flooded my mind, glimpses of a forgotten past filled with joy, but also pain and regret. I saw laughter, family gatherings, and then a flash of something terrible, an accident, a moment of anguish. The figure wasn't just a shadow. It was a part of a story I had stumbled into, and it was thirsty for closure. In that moment, I gathered my courage, meeting the glowing blue gaze. You want to share your story, don't you? I asked softly. My words seemed to resonate in the heavy air, drawing closer to the figure. Tell me your story, and maybe then you can find peace. The shadows began to swirl faster, sending a rush of cold air around the room. I stood grounded, heart racing, watching as darkness whipped about like a tornado. A deep, echoing voice, layered and distorted, filled the room. Long ago, I was not a shadow. I had a name, a life, a family. But one foolish mistake. The voice trailed off, and the weight of sorrow filled the air. I felt tears stinging my eyes as the figure continued. I lost everything in a heartbeat. I was cast away, and now I am lost. The warmth in my chest sparked, an urge to help bubbling inside me. You can find your way back, I urged, stepping closer once more. You just need to be remembered, to let go. The shadows trembled but fell still, as if considering my words. I have been forgotten, it whispered, the sorrow lacing its voice. Where is my family? Where is my home? Those words struck a chord in me, resonating deep in my soul. I could feel the pain it held, the weight of loneliness that pressed down harder with each passing moment. It was desperate, trapped in the past and unable to move forward. With a sudden resolve, I thought of my own memories, all the love and laughter I had shared in my little cottage. Let me help you find them. We can remember together. In response, the darkness around the figure flickered wildly once more. You can, it echoed, doubt and hope intermingling in its tone. I nodded, determination flooding my heart. Yes, let's create new memories that honor the past. Let's gather your family in our hearts and keep your story alive. As I spoke, I felt a warmth enveloping me, and the heavy atmosphere began to lift. The figure's form shimmered, pulsating with anticipation. You are brave, it murmured, a hint of admiration weaving through its voice. But just as the moment felt charged with possibility, the shadows darkened, and a low growl resonated from the depths of the room. My breath caught in my throat as the uninvited chill returned, twisting my gut. I turned, realizing that the shadows weren't just the spirits. They were darker, more sinister. Another presence was joining us, one that did not want the spirit to be freed. The new shadows stretched along the walls, converging towards me, seeping from the corners like murky smoke. They seemed angry, sending shivers down my spine, making my skin crawl. My heart raced again, and instinct told me to flee. I clutched the locket tighter, desperate and afraid. Stay with me, the figure commanded, its voice strong despite the chaos that surrounded us. The shadows writhed, deepening in color. I won't leave you, I shouted back, feeling strength surge through me. But the weight of the darkness pressed against me, clawing at my sanity, forcing doubt into my mind. It wanted to break my resolve, to snatch the connection we had made. The air crackled with tension, and I felt the creeping fear gnawing at my insides. I could see the shadows now, faces twisting in agony, figures emerging from the dark, bound by pain and sorrow, longing to pull me into their midst. Their angry whispers clawed at my resolve. You don't belong here, they hissed, voices echoing from everywhere. Leave this realm of light for us. But I stood my ground. No, I yelled, my voice ringing out in defiance. I won't let you take me. The figure beside me grew stronger, its form solidifying in the strain of darkness around us. I am here, it said, filled with determination. A bright light burst from the figure, illuminating the room in radiant shades, pushing the shadows back. It reached out, the warmth of its essence enveloping me, shielding us both from the claws of darkness greedily trying to encircle our minds. But the shadows were relentless. They lashed out, attempting to sweep away the light, desperate to maintain their hold. I could feel their anger, a deep, primal anger that wanted to feast upon my fear. Stand with me, the figure urged. Together we can fight. We became one as that radiant light swirled around us like a river of hope, a final stand against the relentless darkness. I took a deep breath and nodded. Let's do it. I felt the warmth grow hotter, charging the air with energy. The shadows surged forward, but I stood firm, feeling the strength of both our spirits. You will not take us, I shouted, summoning every ounce of courage I held inside. The light exploded, and in that moment, I saw the faces of those lost souls, the weight of their sorrow blending with our determination. As light engulfed the room, the oppressive shadows shrieked, twisting and folding in on themselves. They fought hard, trying to break through, but the light forced them back. Even as they clawed at my mind, I could see the figure beside me grow clearer, their own strength rising in response. Remember us, we cried together, voices merging as one. We are not lost. With a deafening sound that shook the very walls of my cottage, the shadows hissed and shrieked. Light streamed forth, taking the shape of hands reaching out. The darkness started to fold in on itself, pushing back, and within that moment I knew we were winning. Just as the last remnants of the darkness faded, a calming silence descended, wrapping around me like a warm blanket. I felt lightheaded, as if shared energy had left me filled with an inexplicable warmth, lifting my spirit. I opened my eyes to see the figure, now fully formed and radiating soothing light, standing beside me. Its eyes no longer glowed with a haunting blue. They shone with gratitude and hope. You have freed me, it whispered. I looked around the room, feeling the weight of fear lifting. What happens now? I asked, voice soft yet filled with curiosity. With a gentle smile, the figure began to dissolve into light, shimmering like an array of stars. Now I can join my family. You've given me the memory of hope and love. The air felt lighter, filled with an essence of peace. I watched, unable to look away as the spirit ascended, transforming into millions of tiny luminous particles that danced around the room, twinkling as they passed. It felt like a celebration, the culmination of stories shared, and a journey completed at last. As the last spark of light faded from view, I sensed a shift in the atmosphere, a feeling of completeness that wrapped around me like a gentle hug. Though I missed the spirit, its essence remained in my heart. I took a deep breath, feeling lighter and invigorated. And as night deepened around me, I made my way back to bed, knowing that the warmth would stay long after the shadows had retreated. I closed my eyes, drifting off with memories sparkling in my mind, hopeful that in the morning, the world would feel new, different, filled with endless possibility and kinship. But the next morning, the light felt different. As the dawn seeped through the curtains, casting soft rays across my room, I felt a lingering chill that made me shiver. The warmth I had felt the night before seemed like a far-off dream, replaced by a heaviness that settled deep in my bones. I shook it off, convincing myself that I was simply fatigued from the night's events. But as I went about my day, an unsettling feeling clung to me like a shadow. When I stepped into the living room, the atmosphere shifted again. The bright sunlight barely pierced through the heavy layers of dust that seemed to have settled overnight. I glanced around, feeling as if eyes were watching me from every corner. The air smelled stale, and the vibrant energy from the spirit's departure felt lacking, replaced by an aura that was suffocating. Suddenly, I heard an unsettling sound, like a faint scratching coming from the basement door. My heart raced as I froze in place, the sound growing louder, persistent, as if something wanted in. The memory of the figure lingered in my mind, but instead of comfort, I felt dread creeping in. What if something had followed it? I reluctantly approached the basement door, my hands trembling on the handle. The scratching continued, growing frantic. A knot formed in my stomach. I could feel every pulse of my heartbeat thundering in my ears. "Hello?" I called out, trying to keep my voice steady. No response, just the scratching and then a thud, as if something heavy had dropped. A chill swept through me, and I quickly stepped back. I wanted to run, to bolt back upstairs, but curiosity had me rooted in place. The thud sounded again, louder this time, and I felt the floor beneath me tremble. Something deep inside warned me not to open that door. Yet another part of me beckoned to confront the mystery. I took a deep breath, fingers gripping the handle. With a hard twist, I flung the door open wide, only to be met by darkness swallowing the stairs. The basement felt alive with its heavy scent of damp earth and rotting wood. I grabbed a flashlight from the side table, my hand shaking. Flicking it on, the beam sliced through the dark, illuminating faces in the shadows. A jumble of old boxes and odd furniture, their shapes twisting in the faint light. As I stepped into the cool abyss, the scratching turned to a soft tapping, rhythmic and haunting. I shone the light around, scanning the walls, but shadows seemed to blend seamlessly with the debris, hiding what lay beneath. That old feeling of being watched crawled back over me. I focused on the far corner, where the walls appeared darker, almost as if something had soaked up the light around it. I could feel a low hum resonating from that spot, vibrating through my bones, sending fresh shivers down my spine. "Is anyone there?" I called again, my voice sounding small and insignificant in the void. No reply came, just the persistent tapping like fingernails drumming against wood. Driven by instinct, I crept closer to the darkened corner, the flashlight beam flickering as if the batteries were dying. With each step, the atmosphere thickened, wrapping around me, squeezing out the air. A stack of old crates loomed ahead, their surfaces rotten and fragile. I pushed one aside, revealing a trapdoor hidden beneath the dirt and grime. My heart raced as the tapping intensified. With trembling hands, I reached for the handle. It felt cold, almost like ice. The moment I lifted it, a wave of cold air rushed out, and I caught a glimpse of movement from below, a shadow darting back from the edge of the light. I hesitated, the weight of fear crashing against my resolve. "Maybe it's just an animal," I whispered to myself, but deep down I knew it felt wrong. Something more sinister lingered there, something waiting. I couldn't shake the feeling that whatever was down there could sense my presence. With courage waning, I decided to leave it alone, to slam the trapdoor shut and hightail it out. That's when the tapping transformed into a loud bang. Heart thundering, I stumbled backward as if struck by an unseen force. The door creaked open wider, and the darkness gaped hungrily at me. I took a step back, panic rising in me. Something was trying to escape. In that instant, a shadow leaped from the depths, spilling across the floor, a blur of blackness. I turned and ran, the flashlight flickering in my hand, beams slicing through the darkness like desperate claws. I could feel it chasing me, a cold breath brushing against the back of my neck, nipping at my heels. "Get away!" I screamed as I reached the stairs, lunging up them, feeling the heavy shadows clawing at my legs, pulling me down. With a final burst of adrenaline, I flung myself through the door and slammed it shut behind me, locking it tight. Breathless, I leaned against the door, eyes wide. For a moment, all was silent except for the sound of my heart hammering in my chest. But then I heard it, a soft whispering, just outside the door, a mockery of the gentle voice from the spirit, twisted and wrong. A shiver ran up my spine as I slid down to the floor, gasping for air. "Let me in," the whisper rasped, low and sinister, filled with longing and malice. "I want to play." I shut my eyes, wishing the darkness away, but the whispers seeped into my mind, demanding attention. Their chill held me captive, and I clung to the hope that it was just my imagination. After a long, suffocating moment, I rose shakily and edged away from the door, mind racing. I needed to find out what was going on, to make sense of the terror that had spiraled so suddenly from one night of revelation to an abyss of fear. Gathering what courage I had left, I peeked through the small window in the door, squinting at the dim light outside. The hallway was empty. I felt a flicker of relief, but it was short-lived as a flash of movement caught my eye, a dark shape darting back into the shadows at the end of the hallway. My heart sank, realizing I couldn't hide from this. Whatever was haunting me wasn't going to let go easily. "Who are you?" I called out, my voice trembling but loud enough to pierce the silence. The whispering intensified, echoing back through the darkness. The shadows seemed to breathe as their whispers surrounded me again. "You know," they said, a chilling chorus, like 1,000 voices woven together. "We are memories you try to forget. We are here to reclaim what belongs to us." Panic set in deeper, and I rushed to the living room where I could find an escape. I needed to get away from this, to shut out the memories that had brought me here. But as I stepped into the room, it felt different. The locket that had hung around my neck suddenly became heavy, like chains binding me to this place, its very existence a taunt against my last shred of hope. And just then, the flashes of light from the fireplace sputtered back to life. The flame danced wildly, illuminating the room for just a moment. But in that flicker, I saw them. Figures stepping out from the shadows, their faces contorted in pain and anger. Familiar faces, faces I didn't want to see. They were people I had known, family and friends lost in the fog of my memories. They reached out to me, their mouths moving silently, cries of despair twisting through their breaths. The warmth of their presence quickly turned to ice, and I felt the room constrict, the walls closing in like the jaws of a predator ready to swallow me whole. "Help us," one of them mouthed, but the sound was lost in an avalanche of whispers that echoed how lost they were, how I had turned my back on them. Terror coursed through me, and I stumbled back, desperate to escape the sight. The shadows were alive now, a storm surrounding me, pulling me closer to those twisted faces that once held light and love. "No!" I shouted, the words almost breaking my throat. "This isn't real." But deep down, I knew the truth. The flickering flames flickered aggressively, arms of light reaching outward as if desperate to hold back the darkness. I clutched the locket, feeling its warmth sink into my palm. Though it had once been a symbol of connection, it now felt like a noose tightening around my neck, choking me with the heavy burden of forgotten memories. I took a deep breath and closed my eyes, focusing on the warmth that remained, the spark that connected me to life, to the truth I had sought to escape. "You're not lost," I yelled, my voice rising against the tide of darkness, tears streaming down my face. "You were never forgotten. I promised to remember." With every ounce of strength I had left, I opened my eyes, looking around the room filled with shadows. The faces twisted in the light, and I could see their eyes becoming clear, their mouths moving once more, caught up in my declaration. "Remember," I cried, feeling the warmth surge through my chest like a fire rekindling. "Stay with me," as my words filled the room. A strange energy pulsed around me, wrapping me in a cocoon of warmth. The faces wavered, caught between light and shadow, as if deciding whether to embrace my plea or retreat into nothingness. The air crackled, charged with unspoken pain and longing. I continued, desperately reaching for their essence, trying to connect. "Your memories matter. I can remember," I implored, feeling the shadows push closer, hungry for despair, wanting me to falter. The warmth around me flickered uncertainly, and I realized my voice was not enough. It was time to act, to summon the strength of those I loved, to bring their voices into the fray. I shut my eyes, dragging up the memories that filled my heart. I thought of laughter, of the joy we once shared as a family. I envisioned picnics in the park, Birthdays celebrated in a blur of happy faces and the warmth of embraces that spoke of unconditional love. I held on tight to those moments, letting them flood my mind, ready to channel that energy into the chaotic storm swirling within and around me. Remember us? Remember the good times? I shouted, feeling the shadows tremble. I could sense their confusion, their anger waning just enough for light to creep into the depths of their despair. Their eyes, once filled with anguish, now flickered with recognition. I could see them struggling, the light pushing against the soul-crushing darkness binding them. But then, a cold gust swept through the room, snuffing out some of the warmth. It came from the basement, a deep, rumbling sound resonating like thunder, shaking the very foundation of my home. The trapdoor below called to me, echoing threats, whispers clawing at my mind like a frantic alarm. "Don't let them win!" A voice bellowed, but it was different from the others, louder, more sinister. It pushed against my memories, trying to drown them out. Shadows gathered at my feet, swirling violently, their thoughts merging into a cacophony of despair and anger. "Join us!" they screamed, voices clawing at the edge of my sanity. "Embrace the darkness. You can't escape." The faces in front of me began to swirl as if caught in a hurricane of emotion. I felt the heat of the flame flickering, barely holding onto the light, and I realized I was losing them. My heart raced, panic gripping me like iron chains. "Fight back!" I urged myself, grabbing the locket tightly, its warmth igniting a flicker of hope. "I won't let you be forgotten." I focused again on the memories, allowing every good moment to spill out of my heart and into the swirling void. The light flickered wildly, and I could see the faces beginning to clear, their expressions shifting from torment to something gentler. Slowly, I began to hear snippets of their voices, soft, fragile, but they were there. "Remember the laughter," a voice said, echoing softly through the chaos. "Yes, I remember," I shouted, pushing back against the shadows. "I remember the laughter." As I declared it again, a surge of warmth rushed through the room, rekindling the light. The shadows writhed, twisting as the warmth pushed them back. I looked again at the faces, focusing on one in particular, my grandmother, her loving gaze filled with kindness, standing at the forefront of the light. "Stay with me, please," I pleaded, tears spilling down my cheeks. The shimmering glow flickered again, and I felt a wave of relief wash over me as she nodded slightly, her familiar presence comforting. But darkness continued to gnash and hiss from the basement, growling like a feral beast. "You cannot save them, and they will not save you," it roar echoed, reverberating through my bones. The shadows darkened, encircling me, chilling the air as they formed a twisted spectacle of cruelty. They twisted into grotesque shapes, mimicking beloved memories and faces, mocking my desperate attempts to hold on to what I had lost. I stumbled back, my heart racing as they clawed at my mind, trying to push me into despair. "Leave me alone," I screamed, trying to block out their taunts. "You will not take them from me. I won't let it happen." And then, with renewed fervor, I focused on my grandmother's warmth. "You are here with me," I cried out, feeling her presence envelop me, a cocoon against the swirling dread. "You are my strength. Together, we can face them." The shadows quaked, their shapes flickering as if the light were finally burning them away. I reached out, extending my hand toward my grandmother's glowing figure. "I choose love. I choose to remember." The darkness howled in rage, and the cacophony of voices grew louder, blending into a chaotic torment that threatened to pull me under. But I held fast, recalling the tender moments of love and laughter, and a flood of light burst forth from my heart. "Remember us?" I called again, feeling the power swell. "We are stronger together. You cannot take them from me." In that moment, the faces around me glowed brighter, the spirits swirling together in a whirlpool of light and memory. Their essence enveloped me, rushing into the shadows like a tide of protection. The screeching grew more desperate, like a wounded animal cornered. The air thickened, filled with resistance, as the shadows writhed desperately under the pressure of love. I could feel the battle raging, the darkness pressing hard against the light, trying to break through to tear me apart. Just then, I felt the floor beneath me tremble. The basement door raised off its hinges, swinging open with a terrifying creak. Chilling air seeped upward, and from the depths, I glimpsed a figure emerging, tall, monstrous, its eyes burning like coals. This wasn't just an echo of my fears. This was something alive, something lurking just beyond the realm of shadows, waiting to take its prey. It stepped into the flickering light, a creature formed of darkness and despair, its claws sharp and its presence suffocating. "Join me," it whispered in a voice that sent chills down my spine, sliding through the air like ice. "You are mine now." I felt the shadows surge around it like a storm, the whispers clawing at my mind, trying to drown me in despair. But the figures of my loved ones stood beside me, a line of light against the encroaching darkness. I could see them forming an ethereal barrier, protecting me from the creature's grip. "Love is stronger than fear," I shouted, forcing my voice above the din. "I remember you, and I will not lose you." The warmth in my heart blazed brighter, and together, we faced the being looming before us. With one last surge of energy, I pushed forward, calling out for everyone to unite against the encroaching shadows, breathing life into our memories, refusing the creature's demands. "We stand together." The intensity of the light exploded, pushing against the darkness with unrelenting force. The creature screamed, the sound piercing the air as the shadows recoiled, buckling beneath the brilliance of our united love. I could feel the ground shaking, wobbling under the conflict as reality itself began to warp around us. The shadows screamed louder, their cacophony drowning out my thoughts. But with my heart alight and spirit strong, I stood firm against the tide. The room exploded in light, a blinding flare that sent the shadows melting away, shrieking as they vanished into nothingness. Flashes of color surged through every corner, filling the space with warmth and joy once more. And finally, the room stilled, the shadows gone, leaving only echoes of warmth and light. My body sagged, energy drained, but I was imbued with relief. The faces of those I had lost danced before me there, expressions radiant, holding love and gratitude. I took a shuddering breath, feeling the weight lessen, knowing that love had triumphed over the darkness. But as the last echoes of their light began to shift, a lingering feeling crept back, the unease stemming from the basement door, still ajar, still whispering secrets from the shadows below. Had I truly won, or had I merely pushed the darkness away temporarily? A pang of dread coiled in my stomach, reminding me that this battle was far from over. Even as I steadied myself, I felt the whispers begin to emerge again, a promise of what was to come. The shadows may have been vanquished, but something deep in the basement still stirred. They wanted in, they wanted to play. Suddenly, as if sensing my thought, the trapdoor creaked once more. My heart raced as I turned to see a dark figure reaching out from the depths, tendrils of shadow stretching toward me. The thrill of my victory felt distant now, and fear seeped into my veins as the whispers grew in strength, a chorus that sang of anguish and hunger. I could feel its pull, a siren's call luring me back into the chasm. With growing dread, I remembered that the battle against fear and loss was not over yet. And for every memory I had fought for, another shadow waited to take its place. Taking a shaky breath, I prepared myself. I wouldn't run. I wouldn't hide. I was ready to confront whatever horrors lingered just out of sight, determined to protect the love that remained and reclaim a future that felt dim. With newfound resolve, I stepped toward the open door, its chill radiating. There was no running now. I needed to face the darkness head-on. I had a lingering feeling that the worst was yet to come, but for the sake of my lost loved ones and the memories that would guide me, I would uncover the truth hiding in the depths, no matter the cost. As I stepped down, each creak of the old stairs echoed ominously, a direct challenge to whatever lay below. With every heartbeat, shadows danced along the walls, whispering, teasing, taunting me to surrender. But I fought back against the tightening grip of fear, remembering the light that had once shattered the darkness. With every step I took, I felt my resolve solidify, carrying the laughter of my family with me as my shield. The air grew colder, but I felt their presence beside me, pushing me forward. I was not alone. Not now. Not ever again. And as I reached the bottom of the stairs, I knew this was just the beginning. The dark corners of my home were about to reveal secrets long buried, unearthing both terror and truth. But I was determined to face whatever lurked in the shadows, to conquer the nightmare and reclaim the memories that had held me captive for too long. This time, I would uncover it all. As I reached the bottom of the stairs, the air grew thick and stale, wrapping around me like a shroud. Shadows crept along the walls, twisting and contorting into nightmarish shapes. A faint light flickered dimly ahead, revealing the remnants of what once was a storage space cluttered with forgotten items, cobwebs hanging like ghostly tendrils from every corner. The darkness seemed alive, crawling toward me, urging me to step back, but I couldn't. I forced myself to move deeper into the musty room, my heart racing with each small sound. The floor creaked beneath my feet, groaning as if it recognized the weight of dread I carried. An old trunk sat in the corner, dusty and worn, begging to be opened. But as I approached it, I felt a chill wash over me, like an icy breath at my neck. I hesitated, a shiver running down my spine as I remembered the whispers calling from the shadows, the promise of secrets long buried. Summoning my courage, I knelt in front of the trunk. My fingers brushed against the latch, quickly turning it as it clicked like a gunshot in the silence. The lid creaked open, revealing a jumble of photographs, yellowed with age and stained with time. I pulled them out slowly, each image sending a jolt through me. They showed faces of my family, captured in moments of joy and laughter. But one picture stood out, a dark shadow looming in the background, a silhouette I recognized only from blurred memories. My breath caught in my throat as I flipped through the other photographs. Each one revealed that same figure, lurking always just beyond the edges of light, watching, waiting. I could feel its presence pressing against me, a cold finger on my spine. The whispers swelled around me again. You cannot run from what you buried. I could almost hear their taunts echoing off the walls as the shadows flickered like dying lanterns. Suddenly, something scraped across the floor behind me, an unmistakable sound of nails dragging. I whirled around, my heart pounding like a drum in my chest. The light dimmed, shadows pooling together, thickening and shifting ominously. My eyes strained to adjust, searching for the source of that dreadful noise, and my breath quickened as my mind raced with possibilities. Whatever was down here with me was inching closer, and I had to face it. "Show yourself," I yelled, desperation mixing with fear. The shadows coiled lower, writhed like serpents, but remained just out of sight, teasing me from the dark corners. I could feel a presence solidifying as if something were gathering itself, forming in the gloom. I stood my ground, recalling the warmth of my loved ones beneath me, urging me to move forward, but dread held me in place like iron chains. Then, all at once, that presence rushed out, a cascade of shadows bursting from every corner. They lunged toward me, a tide of darkness that enveloped me, blinding me in an instant. I stumbled back, gasping, the sensation of cold fingers brushing against my skin leaving me paralyzed in fear. The whirling mass of shadows twisted around me, and I could hear them whispering, voices overlapping in a chaotic symphony of sorrow. "Join us! Join us!" they cried, the words dripping with malice. They enveloped me tighter, and I felt my own energy being siphoned away, my warmth fading against their icy grip. Panic surged through me, erupting into a primal scream. The echoes ricocheted off the walls, drowning out their taunts, shaking the very foundation of the room. Suddenly, A sudden burst of light erupted from the trunk. I could feel hope surging again as the photographs instinctively lit up, shining brighter than ever. As if recognizing the power of my memories, the shadows recoiled, momentarily pushed back. I grasped at the energy, pulling from the warmth of my family, channeling it through me. "Get away from me!" I yelled, brandishing the illuminated photographs like a shield. The bright light cut through the shadows, illuminating the room with a fierce glow. Shapes flickered in the light, revealing grotesque faces, twisted expressions filled with rage and despair, their forms blurring like a forgotten nightmare. With renewed strength, I shouted again, determined to reclaim every piece of light I could. "I remember you. I remember our love." The shadows howled in fury, clawing at their presence, their shrieks echoing like sharp wind against stone. I felt lingering warmth around me, the support of those I had lost rising to meet the darkness. But as I pushed forward, demanding the truth of their presence, I felt something shift beneath the floor. The ground trembled slightly, a low rumbling sound echoing from the depths below, a warning reverberating deep within my bones. The shadows quivered, retreating slightly, but their eyes glinted with malevolence, refusing to yield completely. I focused on the remnants swirling in the air around me, determined not to let their despair consume me. Against the swirling shadows, I felt an odd sensation rising from within, an urge to confront whatever lay hidden beneath. The darkness would not break me. I needed to discover the truth of my family's fate, willing to face the demons that had chased us for so long. "Reveal yourself," I demanded, bursting with determination. The shadows thickened again, swirling around, rising higher as if to mock my bravery. "I will not run away from you anymore." And as my voice rang out, a profound silence fell, a stillness before the storm, before the final confrontation. From the void, a set of glowing red eyes appeared, piercing the darkness, watching me with an intensity that made my veins ice over. An icy laugh echoed, rich with malice, and the air became electric with tension. "You think you can challenge me? You are just a flicker of light in a sea of shadows." The darkness began to spin more violently, swirling and pulsing like a living entity. "You've tasted the fear and you've felt the loss. Accept it. Join me." It hissed, a jagged sound wrapping around my thoughts, wrapping tighter and tighter like a snake scoring its prey. I could feel the cold tendrils of despair creeping back into my mind, trying to suppress my resolve, but the memories of my family burned fiercely. My heart thudded in my chest as I clung to their warmth, unwilling to succumb to the siren call of the darkness. I stood tall, mustering every ounce of strength within me. "No, I am not afraid of you," I shouted. "You are nothing without my fear." The creature shrieked in rage, the sound curdling the air, the shadows writhing in a frenzy as it struggled against the light. I channeled every bright memory of laughter and love, every smile, every moment that had made me whole. The light erupted from the photographs, illuminating the cramped space, pushing back the pitch-black mist that tried to swallow me. I felt the shadows convulsing, grappling to get a grip on the light that was unraveling them. It was all around me now, a fierce battle between the light of my memories and the consuming darkness that sought to reclaim me. Remember, I felt the pulse of my family's strength beside me. I thought of my grandmother, her smile bright, her words echoing in my mind. The price of love and connection outweighed the price of fear. But then, desperation kicked in, and the figure beneath me began to materialize, horrific and large. Its body was woven with shadows and malice, every inch pulsating with rage. The ground beneath me quaked, and I could feel the pull of its presence beckoning me down into the depths where it thrived. "Together we thrive," it growled, voice a grating hiss. "Together, we will never be forgotten." Darkness surged, expanding like a wave, crashing closer, its tendrils reaching out toward me, trying to snatch away the light. The laughter of my family echoed in my heart, urging me forward, urging me to fight with everything I had. Never, I spat defiantly, feeling power course through me, igniting the fire within my soul. I thrust the illuminated photos forward, a beacon of hope that cut through the tumult, illuminating the way. And as I opened my heart to embrace the flood of memories, the shadows recoiled in agony. The creature howled in fury. This was a battle for my soul, for the light within me. I knew then I had to push deeper into the darkness, right into the heart of its fearsome domain. I could no longer stand at the edge of this abyss. I had to confront it, and so with each step I took, the ground trembled beneath me like the beating of a menacing heart. The shadows creeping back into the corners, but growing more ominous, more desperate. The final battle was upon me. With a breath, I plunged forward into the fray, prepared to unearth the source of this darkness once and for all, ready to unveil the truth it had hidden so long in the forgotten corners of my past. My family's love would be my weapon, and together, we would confront whatever haunted these depths. The shadows surged upward, begging for dominance, but I would not yield. As I stood at the precipice of darkness, I could feel it pull, inviting me into its depths, swirling, consuming, begging for surrender. But I wouldn't break. I wouldn't let go of hope. The time for running was over. I was ready to face it all. The shadows, the whispers, the truth buried beneath. I would uncover every chilling secret this darkness held. I could feel it, lurking just beneath the surface, ready to pounce. It was now or never. I took a deep breath, my heart racing as I steeled myself, ready to dive into the heart of that shadowy chasm. The oppressive air around me thickened even more, wrapping around me like dark velvet, the smell of decay and dampness clawing at my nostrils. Each step felt heavier, as if the darkness itself were trying to weigh me down, pulling at my spirit just as much as it whispered secrets of loss and despair. But I pressed on. As I ventured deeper, the faint glow from the photographs flickered like a dying ember, casting eerie shapes that danced on the walls. I could see the dark figure before me, its form shifting and twisting, growing larger, more defined with every heartbeat. I focused on it, burning the image into my mind, determined not to look away. It bore that same haunting silhouette as in the pictures, an embodiment of dread and forgotten memories. Suddenly, a gust of wind howled through the cellar, extinguishing most of the light around me. The remaining flicker cast the room in shadows, and I felt a chilling gust sweep past me, wrapping around my legs like icy fingers. I glanced to my left, where a door I hadn't noticed swung open slowly, creaking on its rusty hinges. A deep darkness awaited beyond, a void teeming with restless whispers. I didn't want to step into that abyss, but something compelled me. The air crackled with energy, hinting at past remnants of sorrow mixed with buried secrets. With careful steps, I approached the threshold, my heart pounding louder than the rustle of the damp ground. Inside, I found a narrow passageway leading to an even darker chamber. As I crawled through, the air thickened, swirling around me like the remnants of a nightmare. The shadows danced wildly, and I could hear soft, eerie humming, a lullaby that resonated deep within my bones. It wrapped around me, evoking haunting memories of sweet childhood moments shrouded in love, yet twisted in a sinister way. I squeezed my eyes shut, shuddering at the dissonance of the melody, trying to block it out. But it stayed with me, drowning out my thoughts, wrapping my mind in a blanket of fear. I stumbled forward, desperate to escape the grip of that haunting song and perhaps find the source of it all, what awaited beneath. As I reached the center of the room, the darkness condensed, creating a thick pool of shadows that pulsated like a heartbeat, as if it were alive. From its depths, faint glimmers of light began flickering, eerie reflections that bore resemblance to the photographs. I hesitated for only a moment, sensing the trepidation swirling within me. "Face the truth," I whispered, forcing myself to step closer. The ground felt unstable beneath my weight, like the fabric of reality was tearing apart with each footfall. Just then, the whispers grew louder, morphing into fragmented phrases that echoed ominously. "You left us? We never wanted to go." The voices drifted through the air, each word coming from different angles, intertwining in an unholy crescendo that threatened to unravel my sanity. My pulse quickened, panic rising, as I recognized familiar tones mingled with the shadows, my family's voices, lost and pleading. "Stop it!" I cried out against the cacophony, feeling the pressure of their desperate energy pressing on me. "You can't take me!" The shadows writhed, their tendrils stretching toward me, brushing my skin with a cold sensation that made my stomach churn. I could see faces flash within the shadows, horrific and distorted, twisted in pain and rage. Suddenly, the shadows lunged forward, morphing into dreadful shapes that surrounded me. I could see all the lost souls call out for release, clawing at my heart as their darkness bubbled over. A sense of dread washed over me as I darted back, searching for a way out of the onslaught that threatened to consume me whole. The darkness withdrew for a moment, gathering into a vortex, swirling violently before my eyes. From its center, the shape of the being began to emerge, grotesque and otherworldly. It was a terrifying amalgamation of the figures from the photographs and the shadows around me, ghosts of family intertwined with something entirely sinister. It lashed out, razor fingers stretched toward me, sorrow and anger mingling in its hollow gaze. The whispers escalated into a maddening chorus. "You must join us," they shrieked, which sent a pulse of dread through my body. I backed away from the growing figure, feeling the wall of the chamber solidify behind me. My mind raced. There had to be something I could do to stop them. Remembering my grandmother's warmth steeled my resolve. I did not let go of the love I felt, and I would harness it against this darkness. "Get away from me!" I shouted, firming my stance. The glow from the photographs began strengthening once again, illuminating the space in brilliant bursts. In defiance of the shadowy figures that desired to consume me, I stepped forward, raising the photographs high. The light blasted outward, illuminating the grotesque entity, causing it to cry out in anguish, the walls vibrating with its pain. I wrapped my emotions around me, utilizing the warmth of my memories as a cloak against the encroaching darkness. "You are not my family," I yelled. "You are a nightmare. I won't let you take me." The tortured souls pulsed, their faces shifting in torment. Yet within that chaos, I glimpsed a faint flicker of hope. As I stood firm, pumping my energy into the photos held tight in my hands, I focused on the memories that bound us, not the fear that tried to tear us apart. "Remember who you are," I shouted into the void, and the shadows faltered, hesitating slightly. I could feel the darkness retracting, losing its grip as I summoned the essence of my loved ones. The harsh whispers began fading, and with them, the monsters in the darkness seemed to squirm, their own existence threatened. With every ounce of strength, I forged ahead, letting the light burst from within, demanding that they remember their bonds, their warmth, their laughter. The darkness around me hissed and spat as the glowing energy expanded, a barrier against the consuming dark. I couldn't let fear define my future. I would not lose them again. Then, without warning, the air grew heavy, shifting the very fabric of reality once more. The shadows disconnected from their former forms, contorting themselves and swirling furiously, merging into a single, monstrous entity. Its eyes glowed fiercely, burning into my soul as it roared in fury. "You cannot escape the truth. You will all become part of me." I braced myself against that terrifying force, focusing on pushing against it, pouring everything I had into the light. But I could feel it as the darkness surged, clawing at the edges of my mind, dredging up feelings of worthlessness and isolation. It was a constant pull, a threat to unravel the very core of my being. Still, I pressed on, refusing to bow down to those feelings. The flickers of light expanded further, clashing against the shadows in a brutal whirlwind of energy. I could see forms coalesce from the darkness, those lost souls, pleading through eyes filled with sorrow. "Release us," they cried out as one, voices filling the air like a melodious doomed echo. For a moment, I felt a pang of sympathy seep through me, filling the cracks within my resolve. Could I truly release them? Or would that surrender only bring on new horrors? Each face was connected to my own, memories blending with sorrow, reminding me of the sacrifices that had created the bond. There was warmth in that connection, but it was slipping through my fingers like sand. "No!" I shouted defiantly, breaking free of my doubt. "I won't give up on you. I will bring you home." The shadows surged, threatening to envelop me. But then I pushed my thoughts outward, embracing the very essence of love and hope connecting us all. The power grew within me, lighting a fire that glowed brighter than the darkness surrounding me. The entity screamed in painful reverberation as I used everything within me, fueled by the memories of laughter and unity. Light exploded outward, engulfing the darkness as it struggled to hold on to its form. I could feel the pull of the shadows weakening. My family, my love was stronger than any fear they could invoke. "Together," I cried out, my voice rising above the chaos. "We can do this!" And I felt their spirits pouring into me, lifting me up, empowering me. The boundary between light and dark blurred as I merged memories with the pure essence of love, exploding like a supernova in the stagnant air of the chamber. Suddenly, the darkness jerked as if struck, the shadows splintering with raw energy. Screams erupted, so loud they threatened to shatter my eardrums as they recoiled, retracting into themselves. A swirling mass spiraling away from the brilliance that was now cascading through the room, forcing the shadowy figure to dissolve into nothingness. But the victory felt fragile, and I knew the fight wasn't over. As the remnants of darkness shrieked and faded, I realized the entity would not be defeated so easily. It was still out there, lurking and waiting, hiding in the shadows, preparing for a chance to come back. There were still questions waiting in the dark truths yearning to be uncovered, and I needed to face them all if I was going to finally break the cycle of fear that threatened my family's legacy. With one last look back into the swirls of darkness now dissipating, I steadied myself, the photographs clutched tightly in my hands. The air felt colder without the entity, but there was a new energy surging within me, hope flickering like the light around me. I prepared for the next phase of my quest, determined to uncover the secrets hidden just beneath the surface, ready to face what the darkness still held, a final piece of the puzzle that threatened my reality. The shadows would fade, but the path to true peace lay somewhere deeper, where the deepest fears still waited to be revealed. I turned away from the remnants of that haunting domain, my resolve unyielding, the remaining glimmers of light lining my path as I delved further into the unknown. I would reclaim what had long since been lost and extinguish the darkness once and for all. I steeled myself, feeling the last echoes of the dissipating shadows flutter around me like fallen leaves in an autumn storm. The chill in the air had turned into a biting cold, creeping down my spine, as if the darkness had left behind remnants of its icy grasp. I was standing at the edge of the unknown, the walls of the chamber closing in around me, threatening to swallow me whole. With determination, I stepped further into the unexplored depths of the cellar, my heart pounding. Each footfall felt more uncertain, the ground shifting beneath me. It was unsettling, as if the very floor was alive, breathing with anticipation. I peered ahead, straining my eyes to catch any flicker of movement, each flicker of light illuminating the unsettling space around me. The atmosphere grew denser, filling with a dampness that clung to my skin. I noticed something strange on the far wall, a mirror, warped and cracked, reflecting fragmented images of myself in disarray. I moved closer, drawn to its eerie glow, but as I approached, the reflections began to shift, warping into grotesque parodies of my face. I gasped as eyes stared back at me, wide and filled with fear, but they were not my own, The whispers returned, clearer now, layered like an elegant tapestry of sound. Look closer, they beckoned, and I felt an unsettling pull toward the mirror, a compulsion to peer deeper into the glass. I could see the shadows swirling inside, lacing through the cracks like serpents creeping through a darkened hollowness. "Don't," I whispered to myself, gripping the edges of the frame. "It's a trick." But my curiosity was overwhelming, and I leaned in further, trying to discern what lay beyond the surface. Suddenly, the glass rippled, distorting my reflection into something nightmarish. A darker version of myself emerged, twisted and cruel, mocking me with malevolent eyes that burned deep into my soul. It smiled a wicked smile, and I recoiled, my heart racing as a wave of nausea swept over me. The reflection leaned closer, its whisper soft yet chilling. "You are just as lost as we are, just as broken." An icy hand shot out from the mirror, brushing my fingertips before it vanished back into the glass, leaving behind a freezing touch that lingered on my skin. I stumbled back, heart pounding, breath hitching in my throat. "What have you done to us?" I demanded, backing away slowly, but the whispered words echoed in my mind, taunting me. The space around the mirror began to shift, and I felt an unnatural wind blow through the chamber, swirling papers and dust around me as shadows gathered thicker. I turned, desperately searching for a way out, but I was trapped in this ghostly arena, the air tingling with suspense as the darkness encroached once more. I dashed away from the mirror, deeper into the cellar, where the light from the photographs flickered around me like dying stars. With every step, the melody of that haunting lullaby returned, blending with the whispers, wrapping around my thoughts like a cocoon of despair. "You belong to us," the voices sang sweetly, each syllable digging deeper into my consciousness. Just then, I stumbled upon a door hidden in the shadows, its wood aged and twisted. My heart raced as I grasped the doorknob, feeling the cool metal against my palm. I hesitated, wondering what horrors awaited beyond, but the pull of the darkness urged me forward. I took a breath and twisted the knob, pushing the door open with a creak that echoed ominously through the air. Inside the room, a thick fog hung like a shroud, obscuring my vision. I stepped cautiously, heart pounding as silhouettes flitted just beyond my sight, whispering dark secrets stirred by my arrival. The walls were lined with shelves overflowing with tattered books and strange artifacts, remnants of long-forgotten rituals that made the hairs on the back of my neck stand up. There was a scent of mold and something darker, something that felt like loss itself. I moved deeper into the room, my pulse quickening as shadows danced mockingly, teasing my senses. I reached out for a dusty tome, hoping for answers, but the moment my fingers brushed its cover, an ear-splitting shriek filled the air. The walls seemed to vibrate with power, and I spun around just in time to see ghostly figures emerge from the fog. Lost souls, their faces twisted in agony, floating toward me with hands outstretched. "Help us!" they cried, the sorrowful chorus piercing my heart like a dagger. I could feel their sadness wash over me, their despair clashing with my resolve. Heart pounding, I stumbled backward, trying to escape their grasp. "What do you want from me?" I shouted into the thickening shadows, but there was no answer. Only their hollow eyes staring back, pleading for release, words spilling from their lips in a garbled torrent of sound. I could sense their desperate energy emanating around me, and I found myself drawn to the mirror they echoed, now more menacing than ever as it pulsated with their misery. I needed to figure out how to break this cycle of pain that tied them to the darkness, to understand their grief wrapping itself around my own fears. The room began to close in on me, each shelf leaning inward as the shadows converged, pressing against my skin, whispering promises of despair. "Join us," they crooned softly, an unsettling lullaby that made my skin crawl. I stumbled blindly, searching for refuge among the shelves, and as I ran my fingers along the dusty spines, I felt something surge within me, a flicker of defiance igniting in my chest. "Enough!" I screamed, channeling every ounce of strength I had. "I will not become part of this darkness." I will help you find peace." The wails crescendoed, and the ghostly visages seemed to flinch at my words, their forms wavering in response. It was as if my declaration pierced through the fog, sparking a glimmer of awareness among them. I focused on the warmth of my memories, drawing them around me like a protective cloak. Taking a deep, steadying breath, I stepped forward into the void filling the room. "Listen, I can help you find the light again." My voice caught somehow in the thickening gloom, echoing in the silence that followed. For a moment, the world stopped, layered silence enveloping me. And then, as if on cue, the shadows shrank back slightly. Shadows darkened, forming grimmer shapes, pulsing with anger. "You cannot save us," they roared, a cacophony of voices crashing against me, pushing me further into the smoke that rose before me. I stumbled back, feeling the urge to collapse under the weight of their collective despair. But I remembered the love I held on to, the warmth of laughter and cherished memories of my family lighting a fire within me. I wouldn't let this darkness claim my heart. "Help me help you," I pleaded, searching their haunted eyes for a sign of understanding. "I know you want to be free." The air grew charged, tangled with emotion, as I summoned every ounce of faith within me, pushing against the mire of despair choking the room. The flurry of shadows twisted violently, their faces contorting in confusion. "You are different," one whispered, the voice fractured yet more human than the others. "Why do you care? We are already lost." "Because I refuse to lose you again," I shouted, feeling the words burst forth, raw and genuine. "I will not let this darkness win." The air suddenly thickened like a storm brewing, fury and fear coiling around me. "You do not understand," they screamed in unison, their voices crashing together like waves against a cliff. "We cannot be saved." But I felt it then, a spark of something. They were still connected to me, still yearning for light, no matter how deep their pain ran. I took a step closer, reaching out, allowing the connection of shared memories to reignite. "Please trust me." As the shadows surged forward, trying to snuff out the hope I'd kindled, I steeled myself, calling to the warmth of my family, drawing from them. Depth of our shared love. The chamber trembled as light flickered around me, pushing against the darkness, and I felt the souls waver, their forms flickering once more. The moment hung in the air, thick with suspense, as the words resonated between us, fractured but powerful. Would they accept the light, or would they remain mired in their anguish? I could feel their sorrow wrapped around me, binding me closer to their lost essence. And then, as if struck by an invisible force, the shadows halted, their advance faltering. They paused, gazes still filled with longing, but now illuminated by a flicker of recognition. "Join our sorrow," one whispered again, softer this time, vulnerable, almost pleading. "No," I replied firmly, though my voice shook slightly. "Let go of the despair. It doesn't have to be this way." I reached for them, a bridge of light forming between our energies as I fought against the tide of sorrow. One shadow wavered, a flicker of light sparking in its hollow eyes, as it reached toward me with trembling hands. "Help us," it murmured, its voice breaking the oppressive silence. I couldn't let this moment slip. With every ounce of raw emotion flooding through me, I drew all the love I had known into a brilliant beam, sending the light cascading toward them. It spiraled through the room, igniting their hollow forms, filling the space with warmth and connection, illuminating the long-buried memories locked within the shadows. The air sang with their voices, a symphony of sound rising and falling as if in perfect harmony. They began to merge into the light, transforming their anguish into something beautiful, old regrets swirling away like leaves caught in a gust of wind. My heart raced as their faces softened, shifting from despair to a haunting acceptance, and I pushed my energy into the woven tapestry of light, my spirit entwined with theirs. As the connection deepened, a strange transformation enveloped the room. The chill began to lift, and the oppressive weight of the darkness slowly began to fade, peeling away layer by layer. Shadows shrank back, retreating against the power of the illuminating love flooding the space, revealing glimpses of the past entangled in warmth that had once flourished. But I could feel the darkness still lurking, waiting patiently in the corners, biding its time, ready to reclaim what it had lost. I understood then that I hadn't vanquished it. I had merely unearthed a sliver of light that could hold the shadows at bay. I focused on the emerging figures, the lost souls now glistening with the reflections of hope flickering in their once darkened eyes. With the last echoes of sorrow dissipating, I spoke into the warmth that filled the air, echoing my promise, tying together our shared existence. Together, we will find peace. And as I stood amidst the burgeoning light, I could feel the warmth of their acceptance swirling around me, lighting up the corners of the chamber, ready to forge a new beginning beyond the depths of despair. With that, I resolved to face whatever lay ahead. The darkness would not claim me, not today. I could not escape the truths buried within, but I was determined to uncover them and forge a path forward, hand in hand with the souls I had fought so hard to free. I turned away from the shadows, clinging tightly to the light I had ignited and prepared to face whatever lingered beyond, knowing full well my journey was only beginning. I took a deep breath before I moved forward, heart racing with both fear and anticipation. The shadows that remained lingered at the edges of the room, their presence still chilling, reminding me that the battle wasn't over. As I stepped deeper into the chamber, I felt a prickling sensation at the back of my neck, the unmistakable feeling of being watched. The remnants of the darkness coiled and twisted at the periphery, trying to whisper its enticing promises into my ears once more. I shook my head, forcing myself to look straight ahead. I needed to focus on the light and the souls I had begun to connect with. Each step felt heavier, like the air was thickening around me, dense with unshed grief and lurking shadows. Suddenly, I noticed something on the floor, a dusty, old book lying open, its pages fluttering in a breeze that seemingly came from nowhere. I knelt down, my curiosity piqued again, and the moment my fingers brushed the brittle pages, an electric shock coursed through my body. The words danced before my eyes, written in a harsh, spidery script that seemed to pulse with a life of its own. I struggled to read it, the letters twisting into strange shapes that made no sense, as if the very language had come alive. But then one phrase jumped out, clear and urgent. Those who linger in sorrow will never find peace. My heart sank at the implication. This place was not just haunted by souls looking for closure. It was a trap designed to ensnare and consume anyone who ventured too close. As I pulled my hand away, a cold wind swept through the room, extinguishing the soft glow of light around me. The warmth I had felt moments before vanished, replaced by a deep, suffocating chill that gripped my chest. I stood frozen, fear cascading over me like icy water. Shapes began to emerge from the gloom, figures that twisted and contorted, faces half-formed and dripping with despair. "Do you see what you have awakened?" One shadow crooned, its voice a twisted echo, filled with malice. "You will never escape this fate." The other shadows began to close in, their eyes glowing like embers in the dark, hungry for the warmth I had stirred within. "Stay back!" I shouted, brandishing my fists, desperate to ignite the flicker of light still lingering within. But they advanced, relentless and eerie, the air swirling with their mournful cries. "Join us!" they chanted in unison, a cacophony of sorrow that pierced the silence. In that moment, I felt the weight of my own fears surging back, draped around me like a shroud of dark velour. I stumbled backward, breathing heavily, grappling with the oppressive fear threatening to engulf me. My memories of love and laughter seemed so far away, nearly extinguished amidst the rise of despair around me. Was I really strong enough to confront this spiraling darkness? Between the shadows, flickers of light burst forth, illuminating terrifying faces from my past. People I had cherished, but who had become tangled in the shadow's web. They stood there, watching me with eyes filled with anguish, silently pleading for help yet unmistakably trapped in their own misery. My heart sank as I recognized the faces of my family, distorted and trapped within the tendrils of shadow that bound them. "No!" I yelled, feeling the rawness of grief clawing at my throat. "I won't let you take them." I regained my resolve, forcing the memories of happier times to swell within me, stoking the fire of defiance in my heart. I focused on the light that still flickered at my core. The shadows howled as I summoned that energy, pushing against the encroaching darkness. The air thickened, and the figures transformed, their anguished expressions morphing into something monstrous. "You think you can fight us?" They sneered, their voices dripping with contempt, thick as fog. "We are a part of you." I felt the ground shift beneath my feet, the floor pulsing like a living creature, alive with dark energy. It was as if the very essence of grief ran deep in its veins, whispering, "Give in," with an enticing lull. My focus began to waver as the room twisted, each shadow casting a haunting reflection of my own doubts and fears. I have to find a way to free them, and myself. I breathed, determination rising within me. I clutched the old, tattered book tighter, feeling its energy thrumming against me, as if it sensed the gravity of my mission. "I will not be a prisoner of your sorrow. I will break this cycle." Gathering the last remnants of light, I stepped forward again, pushing against the suffocating weight of shadows pressing in from all sides. The whispers grew louder, morphing into a furious wind that threatened to swallow me whole. "You will join the others," came the growling chorus, reverberating through the chamber with an intensity that shook me to my core. As the shadows lunged, I raised the book high above my head, yelling the words that had begun swimming in my mind. "Together we can reclaim our peace." My voice cut through the howling wind, carrying the essence of hope that had begun anew from my heart. The wind shrieked as tendrils of light burst forth from the pages, illuminating the linings of the walls and flooding into the shadows, who recoiled in palpable fury. They twisted and writhed, searching desperately for refuge. I could see my loved ones, their faces filled with longing, staring from the depths of darkness, flickering in and out like distant stars struggling to shine against an overpowering night. "Believe!" I shouted, feeling an electric energy crackle in the air around me. "Remember who you were?" Only now the words erupted from me like a battle cry, a prayer to the light that had been lost. The room erupted in chaos as the shadows shrieked, their cries blending with the voices of my family. I held my ground, the radiant light swirling around me like a comforting embrace. From within the turmoil, I felt a surge of warmth, the souls rising from the depth of shadows, radiating with my spirit. They surged toward the light, their expressions shifting from despair to a flicker of hope. But just as victory seemed at hand, the shadows fought back with a ferocity I had not anticipated. A figure emerged from the darkness, a tall, looming silhouette embodying pure malevolence, its face obscured by an inky void that consumed all light around it. "You think you can save them?" it growled, deep and thunderous, shaking the very foundation of the air. "They are mine to keep." With an outstretched hand, the shadows writhed and twisted, shooting out toward me like sinister tendrils. Feeling the air crackle with dark energy, I realized this entity was the heart of the darkness. It was powerful, a manifestation of every fear and sorrow I had ever experienced. My heart raced as it shifted, eyes glowing in eerie red, seeming to pierce my very essence. Fighting the overwhelming urge to flee, I steadied myself, refusing to be consumed by another wave of despair. "You don't control me. These souls will be free," I bellowed, channeling all my love and strength into a radiant blast of light that exploded forth, illuminating the gloom in shocking brilliance. The room shook violently, and shadows peeled back, screeching in rage as the light clashed with the darkness. The air buzzed with an electrifying energy, and I could feel the warmth of my family's hope merging with my own, flooding the chamber with a luminescence that threatened to banish the shadows forever. But the figure stood firm, its laughter echoing through the chaos, twisted and sinister. "You are only delaying the inevitable," it taunted, and as it lifted its arms, shadows coalesced into a dark storm that threatened to engulf me once more. I braced myself, feeling the surge of dread clawing at my insides. The world around me spun as I grasped the energy that still thrummed in my core. I couldn't let fear prevail, not now when there was so much still to fight for. With every fiber of my being, I pushed back against the dark storm, summoning every shred of hope and love I could muster. "Together!" I roared, and the light around me intensified, bursting forth in waves that battered against the dark storm, overwhelming it moment by moment. Yet, the entity refused to yield, launching fierce tendrils of shadow back, engulfing the light in a wild, spiraling dance. The clash felt infinite. My energy fought tirelessly against the choking darkness, flickering and standing strong even in the face of despair. And then, I saw it again. My family's faces emerging from the shadows, their eyes filled with fierce determination, mirrored within me. "Help us," a voice cried, resonating from the depths of the darkness, echoing my own desperate plea. "Fight!" Together we shouted, pouring our strength into that blinding light, binding our souls into an unstoppable force. As the sound of our unified voices crescendoed, the dark entity staggered, its twisted form flickering beneath the radiant onslaught. I felt the power surging through our connection, a vibrant tapestry woven with their essence and mine, threatening to unravel the darkness once and for all. With a final, heart-stopping push, I channeled every ounce of love into a brilliant being, surging toward the being of darkness. "You will not take them," I cried out, and the light expanded like an explosion, consuming shadows until they began to dissipate in a flurry of flickering particles. The shadows screamed in protest, twisting violently as the radiant energy enveloped them, a beacon of hope driving them into retreat. Finally, the dark figure howled as the last flicker of shadow was engulfed, swallowed by the light. The air thickened with tension before falling quiet, ripples of light cascading through the chamber before settling into a serene glow. With the darkness gone, the warmth began to return. I could feel my loved ones around me, their presence now more palpable and comforting. But the fight wasn't over. It was merely a pause within the storms we had yet to face. The flickers still danced, reminder of the nightmares lurking just beyond the edge of day. I stood tall but wary, determined to continue and discover what lay ahead, ready for whatever horrors might come next, knowing the darkness would retreat, but only for a moment, waiting for its chance to return. The shadows were still out there, lurking in the corners of the world, waiting for their time to strike. But I had learned one important truth. I had the power to fight back, to reclaim hope, and I would protect my family, no matter the cost. There was still so much to uncover, secrets waiting to be revealed within the depths of both darkness and light, ground that needed tilled for healing. And so, I pressed on, holding tightly to that radiant energy surrounding me, prepared for whatever chilling encounters lay waiting in the shadows ahead. I took a step into the silence, but it was a silence that hummed with tension, thick with unseen danger. The chamber felt alive, walls breathing with the remnants of dark energy just moments ago. Shadows began to slither back, creeping along the edges, whispering secrets I couldn't quite understand. Just behind me, the light flickered precariously, leaving me feeling exposed in this unnatural twilight. Each pocket of darkness hummed with a low growl, echoing around me, as if snaking fingers of malevolence reached out to probe my resolve. I shivered, reminding myself that I had fought too hard to let fear claim me now. It was in that moment I realized the room had shifted. The air felt denser, like the weight of hidden eyes were upon me, watching and waiting, anticipating my next move. As I ventured deeper, the floor creaked beneath my feet, each groan resonating like a warning bell. My pulse quickened, the combination of adrenaline and anxiety sending chills racing up my spine. The flickering light flickered once more, the glow begging for stability against the encroaching dark. I hesitated, glancing back, but the path was gone, swallowed whole. Great, I muttered under my breath, trying to keep the panic at bay. Something caught my eye across the room, a glimmer of movement woven through the curtains of shadow. I squinted, focusing harder on that point. With dread pooling in my stomach, I stepped closer, inching toward the flicker, just beyond the reach of my fading light. The shadows seemed to pull back partly, revealing a table covered in dust and littered with strange symbols, each etched deeply into the wood. The symbols shimmered faintly, glowing like forgotten stars. I reached out slowly, fingers trembling as they grazed the surface. In a flash, the symbols burst to life, glowing brightly and filling the chamber with an eerie light. My breath hitched as a figure began to shape itself from the glow, twisting into form before me. It appeared at first as a woman, delicate and ethereal, but even in the shimmering light, something felt wrong. Her features were that of someone lost, a hollow gaze that pierced through the darkness, her smile torn between yearning and sorrow. "You have come to help," she whispered, her voice melodic yet laced with terror. But moments later, it took on a disturbingly twisted note as shadows wrapped tighter around her figure, distorting her features into something grotesque and haunting. "Help," I replied, voice shaky, taking a cautious step back. "What do you need?" As the words left my lips, her form flickered violently, morphing into several other faces, each one more horrifying than the last. There were the young and old, faces expressing pain, longing, and despair. Shattered voices echoed together in an agonizing choir. "Help us escape this prison." The realization sent shivers through me. These faces represented all those who had fallen into despair and become mere shades, circling the edges of forgotten dreams. I felt the shadows thicken, wrapping tighter around me, as if sensing my moment of weakness. They wanted to sink their claws into me, claiming me as their own. "Stay back!" I yelled, my voice filling the echoing void, but the shadows only responded with a pulse of dark energy, overwhelming and suffocating. "Join us!" the figures wailed in unison, their voices rising in pitch. "The darkness is all that remains." I found my back against the wall, heart racing, as visions flared around me of past lives, moments I had wished to reclaim. I could feel them pulling at the edges of my consciousness, trying to merge with their pain. The air thickened, pushing against me like an invisible weight, threatening to submerge me. I fought against the feeling. "I won't let you take me," I shouted, harnessing the light I had left within me. But the shadows responded, growling deep beneath the surface, crawling closer, insatiable and ravenous. Suddenly, the figures coalesced into a single monstrous shape. Eyes wide, mouth twisted into a gaping maw that emitted a low, jagged laugh. "You come here searching for peace, but we are eternally bound to this place. You are just another soul to add to our pain." The air crackled with an oppressive force, and I felt the very chamber pulse in rhythm with my heart, each beat filling the room with more tension. My breath quickened. This was no ordinary haunt, but a sentient whirlpool of grief, despair, and loss, its hunger limitless. Then something shifted again. The shadows reverberated with a new energy, dark tendrils whipping around me like angry vipers. I stumbled back, desperate to escape, but the very walls seemed to shrink, closing in like a vice. "I will not become one of you," I screamed, summoning all the courage I possessed, channeling it into the flickering light still by my side. With each word I uttered, the shadows shrank back slightly, recoiling from my voice as if repelled by my determination. I gripped the old book tightly, focusing on its energy, but I knew I had to do more than just resist. I needed to confront the darkness inside me, the fears I had long buried. In a moment of clarity, I took a deep breath, drawing in the warmth of my memories, The laughter, the joy, those fleeting seconds of happiness. I remember. I shouted into the suffocating darkness. I remember what it feels like to love and be loved. The air shifted again, vibrations rippling through the chamber, and the monstrous shadow shrieked, its form crackling as it twisted in agony. No, it howled, its voice filled with rage. You will feel our despair. With a surge of light, I felt it radiate from deep within, illuminating every small corner of the chamber. I spun, weaving a protective shield of blinding light until the very room pulsed with energy. The faces of lost souls flickered, their anguish transforming into glimmers of recognition as they reached back toward the glowing warmth. Find your peace, I cried, willing them to remember the light inside. The shadows shrieked once more, retreating like smoke, but the creature at the core coiled tighter, refusing to back down. You think you can break this cycle? You are too late. But I wasn't finished. Drawing every ounce of strength I had, I gathered the memories, letting them blend into a radiant burst of warmth and love. The shadows screamed in frustration as my light pushed back against the darkness, surging through the chamber like a tidal wave. In that moment, I felt my own fears transform into fuel for my fire, igniting my spirit with renewed power. I stepped into the heart of the battle, determined to challenge the darkness directly. Together, we find light, I shouted, bringing forth the energy of every soul around me, every cherished moment of joy. As the raw light erupted outward, I could see the darkness beginning to fray, tendrils snapping like threads. Terror rippled across the monstrous face, twisting and contorting, battling against the culmination of light spilling forth. I felt a connection to every soul trapped within the twilight realm, as though they were using the very warmth of my fight to escape the void. But just as I thought victory was within reach, a wave of sinister coolness swept through the room, chilling my bones and clenching my heart. The creature's face twisted into an anguished mask, its eyes glowing with an eerie hunger. "This is not over," it screeched with a voice that echoed with the pain of all the souls consumed. "You will return to us?" The shadows surged again, furious, lashing out like stormy waves in a tempest, a dark reminder that this battle was far from won. I felt the pull toward the dark depths, the urge to surrender, engulfed by their despair, relentless and overpowering. "Not today," I shouted, forcing myself to remain anchored, grounding my strength within the flickering light that still pushed against the dark tide. I remembered the warmth of love, their laughter cradling me like a protective cocoon. As I summoned that energy, I could feel the room trembling, caught between two warring forces. And then everything shifted. The shadows drew back in anticipation, a momentary lapse where I could feel the air grow still. Something enormous was gathering, the dark entity summoning all its strength for one final push, coiling tighter like a spring ready to snap. I had to act quickly before the room turned against me. "I choose light," I declared, channeling every ounce of emotion, every spark of hope and connection woven within me. My heart thrummed with power, and as I raised the shimmering book above my head, its pages flew open, illuminating the chamber with a pure, blinding brilliance. The impact was like a shockwave, pulsating outward, forcing shadows to retreat, folding under the push of the radiance. I felt the pain of untold suffering echo upon me, the once lost souls awakening to the call. "You don't get to take them," I cried, feeling their energy merging with my own, unstoppable force against the sinister darkness that threatened to engulf us once again. Whatever lay beyond was a mystery waiting to be unraveled, and I would not face it alone. Determined, I held onto the shimmering book and stepped forward into the pulsating light, preparing for the showdown that awaited in the shadows of my own despair. And then it happened. A rush of memories burst from the shadows, a torrent of forgotten laughter and lost moments, intertwining with light and shadow, swirling around me in a chaotic symphony of emotions. The air crackled with energy, And as the dark entity screamed in protest, I understood my path wasn't just about fighting the shadows outside, but also about confronting the darkness within myself. I prepared myself for the final dance between light and dark, knowing that these shadows held both power and pain, and that somewhere in between lay the crucial key to transforming despair into something far greater than I had ever known. I felt a shiver run down my spine as memories swirled around me, whispers rising in volume like a distant thunderstorm. The energy in the air crackled with tension, the very fabric of the room vibrating with fluttering emotions. With every breath I took, the lingering darkness pressed closer, wrapping around me like a suffocating blanket. It was as if the shadows were trying to invade my mind, seeking to pull me down into the depths of their despair. I closed my eyes, focusing on the warmth that had once filled my heart. I thought of laughter shared, moments of pure joy that now felt distant yet potent. But the shadows didn't want to let me go that easily. I could feel them crawling under my skin, their icy fingers grasping for the light within me, trying to extinguish the last flickers of hope. Suddenly, I heard a faint, chilling giggle echoing through the chamber. It sliced through the oppressive silence, a sound too innocent yet far too cruel. I opened my eyes to see a childlike figure standing in the depths of darkness. It was a young girl with hollow eyes, her pale skin almost glowing against the surrounding shadows. Her smile was wide, but there was something unsettling in the way her sharp teeth glimmered in the gloom. "Come play with us," she said, her voice sweet yet dripping with malice. "We've been waiting for you." A sense of dread washed over me, and I instinctively stepped back. The laughter of children turned sinister, reverberating through the walls, echoing like a haunting lullaby. In the dim light, I could see other figures emerging behind her. More children, their faces twisted in unearthly joy and despair, their eyes hollow voids that seemed to swallow all light. "We like it here," the girl continued, her head tilting unnaturally. "Don't you want to join us?" I shook my head vigorously, trying to dispel their allure. "I won't stay. You're trapped." The children laughed again, the sound like ice cracking in winter. "We're not trapped. You are. You can't leave us." Panic surged within me as I glanced around, searching for any means of escape. The walls began to close in, shadows curling tighter around me, dark tendrils reaching out for my limbs as I fought to break free. I summoned the light around me, willing it to grow stronger, but it felt like a flickering candle against the oncoming storm. "Come play," their voices sang as one, the room swirling with their energy. I felt the ground shift beneath my feet as the children darted forward, their laughter echoing into a cacophony that filled the chamber. I stumbled back, a sick feeling gripping my stomach. As I turned to flee, the shadows lashed out, wrapping around my ankles and pulling me backward. I fell hard onto the cold, stone floor, the air knocked from my lungs. "No, let me go," I yelled, thrashing against the relentless grip. Just as despair began to settle in, I remembered the warmth of my resolve. With gritted teeth, I channeled that warmth into a radiant ball of light, lifting it above my head like a shield. The shadows recoiled, hissing like snakes as I pushed myself back to my feet. "You can't have me," I shouted, the light glowing bright enough to pierce through the encroaching darkness. For a moment, it felt like I was breaking through, driving back the gloom with the force of sheer will. But just as I thought I was gaining ground, a shadow leapt forward from the frenzy, taking the shape of a figure I once loved. A figure twisted and corrupted, hovering just beyond reach. It was someone familiar, their face familiar yet distorted, their eyes flickering with dark flames that promised sorrow. "Why did you leave me?" It spoke, voice a hollow echo of memory, full of anguish. "You promised you would always be there." My heart ached, a pang of regret mixing with terror. "No," I cried out, shielding myself from the words. "I won't let you manipulate me." But the shadows laughed, the children's giggles mixing in eerie harmony with the anguished cries. The darkness was alive, feeding off my fear and hurt, growing heavier and more oppressive, creating a whirlwind of chaos. "We only want to be with you," their voices chanted, circling me like a frenzied storm. The walls seemed to bend and twist, creating horrifying illusions. Faces from my past flashed before me, each one screaming in despair, their eyes pleading for help. "Help us," they cried, and I felt the pull of their memories drag me down, threatening to drown me in the very tides of sorrow I was trying to escape. It felt as if every regret, every failure was clawing at my psyche, whispering that I was indeed trapped, that there was no escape from this unending night. "You are one of us now," the shadows shouted, their voices growing louder, a symphony of torment echoing through the abyss. I squeezed my eyes shut, focusing on the light, feeling the warmth flicker against the cold dread wrapping around me. "I am here for a reason," I shouted, drawing on every ounce of determination left in my heart. "I will not give up." It was the first time I felt the light pushing back, each flicker a reminder of my strength, a spark of defiance against the darkness. The cacophony of laughter began to wane, the shadows shuddering beneath my intensity. I opened my eyes and raised the book again. The symbols flared, radiating vibrations that pierced through the chaos. "Release them! Release us all!" I cried into the tempest, feeling the energy resonate through me like shockwaves, shaking the very ground. For a moment, confusion lit the faces of the shadowed figures, uncertainty flickering in their hollow eyes. The darkness hesitated, recoiling as the light expanded, seeking out their fear. But I knew this battle was far from over. The entity feeding on that despair was still lurking behind every scream and laugh, waiting for a moment of doubt to act. I could feel the cold dread creeping back, thickening the shadows, as the laughter morphed into snarls, full of rage and desperation. With every ounce of my strength, I pushed the book forward, as if offering it to the very shadows, hoping against hope that they could see the light within their turmoil. "You don't have to suffer. You can choose to fight back," the shadows hissed, anger boiling beneath the surface as they surged toward me, hungry for despair, hungry for my surrender. Suddenly, they gathered into a massive wave, threatening to swallow me whole. I braced myself, gripping the glowing book tightly, and defiance hardened my resolve. "No!" I screamed, launching forward, the light erupting around me in a dazzling display that illuminated everything before me. The figures froze momentarily, their twisted faces illuminated, showing glimpses of the lives they once lived. "Look!" I shouted, desperate to reach their lost souls. "You are more than this darkness. Remember the warmth of life, the love you held. Fight with me." Their hollow expressions flickered, the shadows hesitating as brief flashes of their lost humanity broke through the surface. I pressed on, pouring every claim of hope into the atmosphere, igniting the flickers of light that I had fought so hard to hold on to. In that moment, the room shook violently, light exploding out in a desperate surge, shattering the grasp of the tendrils. I could feel the room breathe anew, memories weaving together in an intricate dance of light and shadow, creating a swirling vortex of emotion that threatened to consume everything. Yet still, that deep, sinister laughter echoed from the depths, shattering the fragile peace I had built. "You think you can save them?" It was the dark figure again, now more monstrous than before, half shrouded in flickering shadows, eyes blazing with rage. "I will not give up," I yelled back, pushing against the wave of darkness that threatened to reclaim every inch of space around me. The light surged again, my voice gaining strength. "I will free you all." As the shadows gathered into a collective storm, I knew I was on the edge of something monumental. The air crackled with tension, shadows swirling like tornadoes around me. I had to embrace my fears, channeling them into the very light that I fought to protect. With a final thrust into chaos, I gathered every emotion, every ounce of strength, to harness the surging light within my heart. And just like that, as if sensing my resolve, The chamber erupted into blinding brilliance. The chamber erupted into blinding brilliance, a force of light unlike anything I had ever experienced. The shadows writhed around me, recoiling as if the radiant energy was poison to them. Their twisted faces contorted in anger and fear. Their once innocent giggles turned into wails of despair that echoed off the walls, rising to a crescendo that threatened to consume me. I felt the power surge through me, every flicker of light pushing back against the darkness that hungered for my very essence. But I could sense the shadowy figure looming at the edge, a twisted presence that refused to back down. Its eyes glowed like smoldering coals, glaring at me with a ferocity that sent chills racing through my body. "Foolish child," it roared, voice rumbling like a distant thunderstorm. The sound rattled my bones, and I stumbled back, the immense weight of dread almost crushing my spirit. "You think your light can save them? You are just a spark in an endless void." The figures of lost souls surrounded me, their faces shifting from anguish to desperation, mouths opening in silent pleas. I felt them pulling at the edges of my consciousness, each one awakening a memory of love and warmth that contrasted starkly with the chilling darkness. "Help us," they murmured, their voices blending into a haunting melody that filled my mind like a sorrowful lullaby. "Help us escape." Their calls were insistent, reaching into my heart like icy fingers, trying to drag me down into that abyss of despair. I squeezed my eyes shut, forcing myself to maintain focus. I couldn't let them down. I couldn't let myself become another lost soul in this nightmare. Suddenly, the energy shifted around me as the shadows surged forward, coalescing into a colossal wave that threatened to drown out the light. It felt like the air had thickened, pressing down on me, squeezing out every ounce of strength. I gasped as the shadows enveloped me, the cold wrapping around my throat like a noose. Within the dark shroud, I felt the cold brush of fingers on my skin, trailing across my arms and face, like the caress of something else alive. Panic bubbled within me. "Get off!" I screamed, lashing out in desperation. But as I struck into the darkness, the surrounding shadows morphed into grotesque faces, twisted and familiar all at once. I froze, my heart pounding against my ribcage as the faces turned toward me, their mouths stretching into cruel smiles. Their hollow eyes glinted with malice, mouths moving in a chilling chant. Join us forever." Memories flooded into my mind, faces of those I had lost, once filled with love, now twisted into caricatures of agony. I could feel their anguish grounding me to the earth, pulling me deeper into the choking despair. Each face snarled, voices rising together, cracking through the darkness like thunder. The realization struck me. I had to fight against my own memories, confront the pain of loss without succumbing to it. "No!" I shouted, forcing the words out despite the choking darkness. "You are not my past." With that declaration, I felt the light within me flare fiercely, pushing the shadows away from my heart. A pulse of warmth radiated outward, illuminating the faces of the lost souls around me. They flickered momentarily, their twisted features softening, as if my words had cracked through their despair. "Remember who you are," I cried, drawing on the love we once shared, letting it buoy me above the chilling depths. "You don't have to remain trapped." The wails of anguish began to fade, replaced by glimmers of recognition as the faces emanated a warmth of hope. But even as the shadows recoiled, the dark entity lashed out in fury, its form morphing wildly into a swirling mass of anger and hate. "You're meddling in forces beyond your understanding," it shrieked, its voice cracking and sharp, reverberating like shattering glass. In that moment of chaos, I felt an overwhelming pressure, like the very air around me was crumbling under the weight of unending grief. The darkness encroached again, pressing deeply into my lungs, making it hard to breathe. I was losing my grip, slipping into despair as the children's laughter returned, shrill and inhuman. "Come back," they cried, their voices melding into a haunting harmony that hummed through the air, crackling with wicked intent. You belong with us. Why do you fight? Sensing my faltering resolve, tendrils of shadow curled around me, pulling me deeper into that abyss. I could see fleeting images of my own past, moments of happiness twisted into bitter memories, each one clawing at me, trying to bring me down into their suffocating grasp. Why do you resist? The dark figure taunted, drawing closer. Its presence was heavy and suffocating, like a shadow cast by the moon on the darkest night. You are nothing but a flicker against eternal night. Because I choose to fight, I shouted, feeling the last embers of hope flare inside me. I refused to be another lost soul. In that very instant, the book emitted a blinding light, a pure burst of energy that exploded outward, shattering the cold grip of the shadows around me. The force knocked back the figures momentarily, illuminating their faces caught in expressions of shock and dread. I pressed forward, the book thrumming with power in my hands. I felt every inch of the darkness press against me, but I stood taller, channeling the memories, the love, the hope of all, the souls trapped in despair, igniting a fire that would burn brighter than the shadows. Be free, I yelled, summoning the light to swirl around me, weaving it through the air to touch each face like a warm caress. The tangled darkness rippled, as if resisting the warmth, but slowly began to fade, shadows retreating back into oblivion, leaving the flickering souls exposed to the radiant light. But just as I thought victory was at hand, the figure lunged forward in fury, darkness pouring from it like a waterfall of black smoke. You will not escape me, it howled, forming into a grotesque creature filled with teeth and eyes, a caricature of every nightmare I had ever known. Its maw opened wide, swallowing the light like a hungry beast. I could feel its presence consuming every flicker of hope, and with it, my strength waned dangerously low. I gasped, struggling to hold on as darkness clawed at my mind, whispering insidiously, "You can't win." Yet, deep within, a spark ignited again as every lost soul resonated with the flickers of light still alive within them. "Fight!" I cried, channeling that energy into my heart, feeling the warmth swell within, pushing my fear aside. In the face of this monstrous entity, I pushed forth. "You cannot take me." With all my might, I thrust the book forward, the power exploding around me in a blinding wave that shattered the shadows, sending shockwaves through the room. I felt the darkness recoil, stumbling back against the force, its claws digging into the ground, desperately trying to regain its grip. "Never again!" I shouted, my voice ringing out like a bell through the chaos. The shadows howled in frustration, their figure distorting as the light swelled, the faces of the lost souls glowing with warmth. In that moment, I felt the walls of the chamber shift, trembling as the darkness began to fracture, splintering under the torrent of power that surged through me. But with every ounce of light I conjured, the sinister laughter returned, echoing menacingly, resonating deep within the very fabric of the chamber, as if the shadows were laughing at my defiance. "You think you can claim victory?" It cackled, voice rising above the chaos. "You'll never escape the void." The world around me trembled as the entity coiled itself into a massive storm, gearing up for one final struggle. The air turned heavy, saturated with dread as I stood at the brink. I felt the gaze of the looming dark figure, its presence pressing down on me like a mountain. And for a heartbeat, I understood the depth of its rage. The swirling shadows darkened once more, coiling around me with a sentience of their own, feeding on my fears, whispering my insecurities. "You're afraid, aren't you? You're nothing to us." "No!" I shouted, forcing myself to look the nightmare in the eye. I wasn't just a flicker of light. I was strong, fueled by love and memory, smaller, yet fiercely unyielding. I couldn't let it win. With every ounce of strength I had left, I called upon the power within, my voice resonating through every shadow, echoing through twisted realms of terror. "I'm not afraid. The blast of light erupted once more, this time flooding the chamber with a blinding radiance. I felt the shadows scream as if the light burned them, pushing them back, shrinking their ferocity inch by inch as I held my ground. "Leave this place," I commanded, my voice carrying an authority that felt foreign yet familiar. The darkness shrieked, a cacophony of rage and hurt colliding within the room, shaking the walls. I could sense it fracturing under the weight of my resolve. Hope surged within my heart, fueled by the knowledge that I wasn't alone. As the darkness thrashed, I channeled every bit of energy, summoning the memories of those lost souls along with my own, intertwining them with the light in a brilliant dance of defiance. The room shuddered, walls cracking as shadows faded, merging slowly with the light spilling out of the book. "Find your peace," I shouted, feeling the resonance of every shattered soul vibrating in harmony as the fierce brightness pulsed through me. I couldn't let go, couldn't stop, knowing this was the turning point. As the shadows began to disintegrate into swirling particles, I could see the figures of the lost souls, their faces transforming from anguish to relief, each flicker breathing life back into the stagnant air. But just as victory surged on the horizon, the entity howled in rage, its voice splitting the air with an unbearable ache. "You cannot defeat me." And in that moment, I understood the final battle lay ahead, as shadows clawed desperately, merging one last time as a great mass, twisting in fury. The room shuddered, the fissures threatening to swallow everything whole, a final attempt to reclaim the light that was slowly breaking through the darkness. In fear, but not surrender, I pressed forward, determined to shatter this last remnant of despair. "I will fight for you all," I cried out, feeling that light flare once more, growing with every word, illuminating the chamber in an overwhelming epicenter of light and hope. "Together," I shouted, willing every flickering soul to stand with me as the shadows distorted into a cacophony of despair, trying to reclaim what was theirs. "Join me," I breathed, channeling the bond that connected us all, the shared pains, the love, the losses that shaped us. For a moment, the shadows hesitated, caught in the growing radiance that began to envelop them. It was like watching a storm retreat, as if the light poured forward, cleansing everything in its path. The darkness roared, a primal scream reverberating through the air, but now it was filled with desperation, not power. As that brightness surged around me, I felt a rush of energy, a contagious force that shattered the lingering darkness and pushed away the last vestiges of fear. With one final cry of determination, my voice echoing into the abyss, I freed the bond of the spirit trapped in shadows. The very room erupted in a cascading symphony of brilliant light, radiating outward, illuminating the depths of despair and freeing every soul imprisoned at its heart. I watched as the dark figure dissipated into vapor, its cries subsiding into whispers and finally silence. In the stillness that followed, I felt an overwhelming warmth wash over me, a blanket of light that enveloped the chamber, transforming it into a sanctuary of hope. The lost souls glowed softly, their faces peaceful as they left the confines of the darkness behind, drifting into the light with expressions of gratitude. And as the last remnants of shadow faded from view, I stood there, bathed in radiance, my heart full, no longer burdened by fear. The darkness may always linger in the depths, but today I had faced it and emerged victorious, fighting not just for myself, but for every flicker of light lost in the shadows. But as I took a deep breath, the stillness shattered as a whisper slithered into my mind, softly calling from the corners of the room. Not all of us are free. The chill crept back into my spine as the air thickened once more, uncertainty creeping into the sanctuary I had fought so hard to create. Was I truly alone? Or were the shadows merely waiting, gathering in the shadows for another chance to gather again, waiting for a moment of weakness to strike? As I scanned the translucent light that now surrounded me, a deep unease settled in my stomach, twisting it into knots. The air felt different, heavy with something unnameable, and the silence began to thicken around me, making it hard to breathe. A subtle shift in the atmosphere sent a shiver racing down my spine. I took a cautious step forward, my heart pounding like a drum, each beat echoing in the uneasy quiet. I could feel it, a presence lingering at the edge of my awareness, watching me with unseen eyes. Was it gone? I whispered to myself, the sound of my voice stark against the stillness. But as I moved deeper into the chamber, shadows began to twist again, creeping silently along the walls, drawn towards my lingering light. They coiled like smoke, sneering at me, reflecting memories of despair. I could hear faint whispers on the edge of my hearing, low and cruel, echoing off the chamber's dim surfaces. My breath quickened as I tried to ignore them. "Leave me be!" I shouted, the words bursting forth with a force I barely recognized, as if to assert my presence in a space that felt increasingly alien. The shadows paused, and for a second, I thought maybe my voice had pierced their veil of darkness. But then, like a wave crashing against the shore, they surged forward, melding into forms that resembled the very souls I had just freed. Their faces twisted into wretched masks of pain, eyes widening in terror with mouths opening into silent screams. "You should have left us," they hissed, their voices draining into a droning echo that rattled my bones. "We cannot be free. Why? Why are you still here?" My voice trembled, fear clawing at the edges of my heart. I stood my ground, reminding myself of the light that pulsed within me. "You are free. You can leave this place." But with each desperate proclamation, the darkness twisted, beckoning me closer with an eerie allure. "Join us," they whispered, the very shadows melding together to form a grotesque visage that mirrored all my deepest fears, a reflection of guilt and helplessness. Even so, I pushed the thought away, knowing that would not give in to despair again. The light within surged in response, and I fought to keep it alive, forcing myself to look away from the nightmarish faces that loomed before me. Then, just beyond my sight, I felt it, a chilling draft slipping through the cracks of ancient stone, carrying with it a foul stench of decay. My heart raced as I recalled the stories, the tales of those who ventured into dark places, never to return. Suddenly, the light started to flicker, shadows closing in on me like a predator stalking its prey. The walls of the chamber seemed to lean inward, pressing against me, as the shadows drew tighter, clawing at the edges of my light. "I won't fade away," I shouted defiantly, my words becoming a lifeline in the thickening darkness. "I will not let you take me." But the room answered with a low rumble, like distant thunder, and the darkness snarled, echoing with laughter that was both childlike and malicious. "You are ours. Just give in and let go," it beckoned, voice slithering into my mind, seeping into every thought, promising sweet release from my burdens. The offer was tantalizing, a siren's call coaxing me to surrender, to stop fighting. The shadows pressed closer, closing the gap as tendrils of dark began to snake around my legs. The sensation was cold and clammy, like the touch of 1,000 icy fingers, gripping tighter with every heartbeat. I could feel panic rising in my throat like bile, the light within me sputtering in response, wavering at the edge of hope. Just when it seemed like despair would engulf me, a flicker of memory surged up, a moment of comfort from the past, a laugh shared, warmth after a long night. It grounded me, reminding me why I was there, why I had fought so fiercely. "That's right," I whispered, voice shaking but determined. "I am not alone. I carry all of you in my heart." Turning my resolve into action, I raised the book high, channeling every ounce of light and love I had gathered. The shadows hissed, recoiling as if struck. The light exploded forth in a brilliant flash, enveloping the room, pushing back against the encroaching darkness. But the dark figure retaliated, a moving mass of shadows gathering into a towering shape, grotesque and mocking. "You think you can defeat me with mere fragments of memory?" It spat as its shape morphed, eyes glowing with a furious hunger. I am the abyss. I am fear. I am your past. I stood firm, heart racing, battling the urge to flee or fold. You are not me, I declared, voice rising above the creeping dread. You are just an echo of what I refuse to be. The ground trembled, thrumming with tension, as if the very foundation of dark and light was at war. The darkness roared, the chamber vibrating with its fury, shadows swirling around like vicious, angry winds. They surged, crashing against my light with a vengeance, threatening to wipe away every hope I held dear. But amidst the chaos, I focused on the flickering memories of joy, warmth, and laughter that fought against the encroaching void. Feel the light, I cried out, the words escaping into the chaos as if they might draw strength from the very act of proclaiming hope. The shadows writhed and screamed, angry and desperate, trying to reclaim the ground they had nearly lost. In that swirling chaos, I realized I was not just fighting for myself anymore. I was an anchor, a beacon calling out to those lost, those who had waited for surges of light amid the darkness. Together, we rise. I shouted with every fiber of my being, a chant that resonated through the air. The light intensified, brightening against the shadows, wrapping around the lost souls, reclaiming their memories one by one, weaving them back towards hope. Yet, as the light spread, the dark figure lunged again, eyes shimmering with violent rage. You cannot resist forever, it roared, a guttural sound that reverberated through the chamber, shattering the fragile tranquility. Desperation clawed at my heart, but the flickering light danced with unyielding strength. Must I fight you alone? I shouted into the storm, directing my plea where hope had begun to take root. The shadows hesitated, bewildered, as if my words held more power than they could comprehend, an invocation of unity in the face of terror. You are not alone, they echoed back, voices layered with unease, uncertainty creeping into the very marrow of their darkness. The mass of shadows shivered as memories twisted around it. Faces emerged from the dark, a kaleidoscope of the past, reflections of those I'd lost, carrying a mix of sorrow and resolution. Each face flickered like a star in a dark sky, struggling against the tempestuous weight of despair. Do not let it consume you, I urged, feeling the link bind us together. We can break free. With that declaration, the chamber trembled, shadowy specters swirling in addition to faces that shone with renewed light. Together, we surged in unison, breaking through the layers of darkness that sought to reclaim us, pushing back against the malevolent tide. But even as we fought against the thickening shadows, I felt an icy breath on my neck, a presence looming at the edge of the light. You are not the light, it whispered, dark and sultry. You are my creation. Fear exploded within me, forcing me to turn and confront the familiar tone. The shadows slithered around me, forming shapes that mocked my every fear, and I could feel the pull of their darkness threatening to swallow me. You will always belong to me, it hissed, emerging from the mass, distorted yet familiar, an incarnation of everything I had tried to leave behind. You cannot escape me. You are the embodiment of my despair. The haunting despair settled deeply in my bones, and I staggered back, the shadows threatening to envelop me again. That isn't true, I shouted, but my voice faltered, fear gnawing at my resolve. I am stronger than you think, and yet here you stand, hiding in the light, it taunted, the figure circling around me, dark tendrils snaking closer, wrapping around my heart and squeezing it like a vice. You cannot escape, not in dreams, not in memories. You are weak, and I am eternal. The walls of the chamber pulsed, feeling alive, and I braced myself as the light flickered in response to the growing despair encapsulating me. My heart raced, anxiety rising within me like a tidal wave. I won't let you take me, I yelled defiantly, remembering the essence of who I was beneath the layers of darkness, remnants of love, of laughter, and even of bravery. The energy within surged back, the warmth radiating outward as I fought to meet the suffocating terror that clung to me like a shroud. Shaking the shadows from my senses, I drew upon every flicker of light, feeling it pulse through me, reclaiming my heart from the clutches of nightmare. Together, I shouted into the void, the words breaking free amidst the barrage of darkness and despair. With all of us, we can overcome. And with that proclamation, the air around me exploded, a brilliant wave of radiant light crashing against the dark entity, forcing it back with relentless fury. The shadows that had sought to reclaim me thinly spiraled back, contorting in agony as the warmth invaded every corner of the chamber. "Join me," I called, and I felt the flickering souls gather, the essence of their interwoven memories strengthening my resolve. We can defeat this darkness. As the blinding light expanded, the entity shrieked in rage, contorting into a cacophony of shapes, fury deepening into despair as the shadows fractured, revealing more lost faces within. But just then, right in the heart of the chaos, a bone-chilling voice whispered through the shadows, sharp and chilling. "You will never truly be free. You think you've won? You are still mine." Terror gripped my throat as I faced the reality of the lingering shadows. Fear coursed with every heartbeat, pulse racing wildly as the darkness converged once more. "No!" I gasped, feeling the light flicker and dim at the ominous tone. But even so, I could feel the warmth of the spirits around me, stronger now than it had ever been. They surged alongside me, flickers of incandescent hope against the relentless tide. The shadowy figure twisted and thrashed, a storm of despair. But I raised my arms, light exploding forth with renewed fervor, piercing through the weight of dread that threatened to consume me whole. "I am not yours," I roared, the light crashing down like waves against the shore, illuminating the darkness with radiant glare that I was never meant to belong to. As the light surged, I felt it pulse through me, a warm wave breaking against the encroaching darkness. The shadows writhed, their tendrils hissing as they recoiled from the brilliance. But that defiant shadow form didn't give up easily. It coalesced into something even larger, a monstrous outline rising amid the chaos, its shape shifting, morphing, becoming more horrific with each passing moment. "Do you see?" It taunted, its voice now a slick whisper that slithered into my mind, wrapping around the foundations of my courage. "You cannot escape your past. I am every fear you've ever had, every moment of doubt. You cannot outrun me." With each word, I felt the ground beneath me tremble as if the very stone shared the dark entity's hunger for despair. I could feel cold sweat trickling down my spine, fear creeping into the corners of my mind. How could I fight something that wore my nightmares like a shroud? But I pushed it aside, reminding myself of the flickering warmth that surrounded me, the memories that came alive, refusing to be overshadowed. Then, the darkness lunged at me, a horde of limbs and faces, twisted and contorted in agony. I stumbled back, trying to escape their grasp, but the tendrils of shadows snaked around my ankles, pulling me down into the depths of despair. I gasped, heart racing, but with every ounce of my being, I summoned the light. I recalled the faces of those I loved, the laughter we shared, the battles we fought together. "I will not give in," I shouted with all the strength I could muster, feeling the warmth inside me resonate with fervor. The oppressive darkness paused, as if confused by my defiance. Yet it quickly shifted, drawing deeper within itself, the shadows morphing into deceptive shapes of familiar faces, smiling mockingly at me. "You think their love will save you?" the entity scoffed, voice mingling with the soft wails of the dark figures that surrounded me, their sorrow intertwined with a sinister glee. "They abandoned you just like I knew they would. They could not understand the depths of your despair." "Stop!" I cried out, clenching my fists, the light within flickering. "You're wrong. They are with me." But with every word, the shadows surged closer, brushing against my skin like icy fingers, chilling my heart. I could feel my resolve faltering, doubts creeping in like a dark fog. What if I was alone? What if none of their warmth was real? Suddenly, the shadows twisted and formed into a vision of my deepest fear, myself, standing alone in a vast, empty void, the echo of my own voice growing softer, fading into nothingness. See, it whispered seductively. This is your truth. You are meant to be alone. The darkness cackled cruelly, feeding on my despair, and I dropped to my knees, feeling utterly helpless. Just then, a flicker of movement caught my eye. I looked up to see a shimmering figure emerge from the depths, radiant and warm, a comforting presence illuminating the surrounding gloom. It was like a star breaking through the blackest night, and I recognized the essence of every loved one I had lost. Their smiles were sweet and inviting, lifting my heart even as the shadows swirled around me like a tempest. Do not listen to it, the figure said softly, voice serene but strong. We are here. We have always been here. The shadows shrieked, losing their grip as the warmth of their love pushed against the encroaching darkness. I could feel my strength building again, realizing that the memories of those I cherished ignited a flame within me. Together, we fight, I exclaimed, feeling the light grow brighter, feeling their presence solidify around me, lending me their strength. The entities screamed in fury, raging against the light as if it could tear it apart. You think this will protect you, it spat, twisting shapes into dark caricatures of my past regrets. You think love can shield you from your fate. The ground trembled violently beneath me as the darkness lashed out, crashing like a monstrous wave, threatening to pull me under once again. I stumbled, feeling the shadows tugging at my limbs, desperate to reclaim what they thought was rightfully theirs. But I held on tightly to the warmth surrounding me, focusing on the light and the love that radiated from my memories. You will not take us, I shouted defiantly, channeling the strength of my vibrant memories, the laughter and whispers that lingered in my heart. With one final push, I gathered all the light and love within me, pouring it forth like a blinding flood into the gnashing darkness. The room erupted in a maelstrom of light and shadow, clashing violently, illuminating the corners of despair that had long cloaked this space. For a moment, I thought I could see the fog of despair begin to unravel, the entity within shaking as if it were losing its very substance. No, it shrieked, but the sound was soon drowned out as a wave of brilliance swept through, washing over everything like the dawn breaking through the night. But just when it seemed the darkness might finally dissipate, I felt it, the presence lurking in the shadows, waiting for its moment. Reality bent once more as the whispers intensified, a low, fevered chant clawing at the edges of my mind. You will always belong to me, it hissed, a reminder that cut deep, like a knife twisting in my heart. Fear gripped me, but not for long. I remembered the warmth of those who had stood with me, and I would not let the darkness tie me to my past anymore. I am bigger than this, I shouted, defiance burning in my chest. My pulse quickened as I felt the shadows tightening once more. They morphed into a horrifying visage, a grotesque reflection of myself steeped in despair. You cannot escape your fate, the figure bellowed, the words slashing through the air like razor-sharp blades. Suddenly, a bone-chilling voice whispered in my ear, soft and deadly. What if everything you've fought for crumbles? What if your light is just a flicker in the oppressive dark? My breath caught in my throat, and I felt a surge of panic. But amidst the chaos, something shifted. I could hear the voices of those lost, pulling me back, urging me to fight, reminding me of my worth. You are not the darkness, they cried out, forcing me back into the light of reality. With renewed vigor, I tore my gaze from the horrifying figure that mirrored all my doubts, focusing on the warmth that surged through me. Together, we overcome. Together, we are more than this, I shouted, my voice echoing in the hollow chamber, defiance shaking the very walls. The entity screeched, a sound so unsettling it felt like it could disrupt the very fabric of time. My light blazed brighter, pushing back against the tides of fear that threatened to engulf me once more. Its form began to shatter under the intensity of my resolve, fragments of shadow breaking off and scattering across the chamber like ash. But even as it fractured, I could feel the chill return, creeping slowly back into the remnants of warmth left behind, wrapping around me like an insidious blanket. Do you see? It howled through the whirlwind of shadows, a voice filled with rage and desperation. You cannot banish me. I am within you, always, and I will return. The room began to tremble violently once more, the air thickening, and the very shadows shimmered with menace. I steeled myself, clenching my fists as I faced the chaos. No matter how many times you return, I will fight you, I declared with growing strength. But as I stood in defiance, the belief in my heart wavered for just a moment. And in that moment of vulnerability, the shadows surged forward, twisting around me, pulling me into their cold embrace. Panic surged, but I reminded myself of the flickers of light that still danced around, refusing to be extinguished. The voices grew louder, rising with a quiet strength, daring me to stand tall. I raised my chin, defiance returning. You may push, but you will never break me. The shadows wailed, a cacophony of twisted regret and anguish rising into a storm of despair. The dark figure loomed larger than ever before, every face and eye glimmering with malice, a swirling tempest of torment. This was at the final showdown, and just as I braced myself for the onslaught, I felt a sudden rush of energy surge from within the depths of my spirit. It burst forth, illuminating the chamber like a supernova, filling every crevice, banishing the shadows, if only for a moment. Together, we rise, I shouted with everything I had as the darkness began to retreat, recoiling from the unrelenting blaze sweeping through the chamber. The echoes of the lost seemed to join me, their cries of joy mingling with my own, urging me forward, fueling the inexorable light. But just as I felt the tide turn, a piercing voice erupted from the heart of the darkness, a howl that froze me. You cannot escape, it screeched. Your shadow is always with you. And in that awful moment of realization, I felt the laughter of the void wrap around me once more, tugging at the edges of my mind, just out of reach, as the darkness surged back in relentless waves. My heart raced, but I stood firm, determined not to buckle under the weight of its despair. Stand with me, I cried out, that underlying hope threading through my voice. If I was to fight this battle, I was willing to fight for every flicker of light that still remained. The shadows shrieked, a sound like raw panic, as the split between light and dark blurred, creating chasms of uncertainty. Although the darkness pressed in, I could feel the pulse of warmth deep within, thrumming with every heartbeat. With every ounce of light I could muster, I cast it outward, ready to face the approaching storm. The shadows writhed, swirling into a vortex of chaos. Faces pressed against the veil, screaming silently, their terror an echo of my own. But even with the overwhelming dread, I focused on the flickers of memory, the laughter, love, the joy of every moment shared. They ignited a blaze within me. We are stronger together, I shouted with determination as the powerhouse of light surged forth, ripping through the imminent dread like paper. The howling shadows roared in rage, blasted back momentarily by the intensity of my resolve. But then it hit me. What if this was just a temporary reprieve? I could feel the oppressive weight returning, snaking around me, threatening to pull me into the depths of despair yet again. And that feeling, that creeping dread, began to swell, writing itself into the very fabric of the shadows around. Endless night, the darkness hissed, engulfing amid the remnants of light, poisoning them with doubt. You will never truly be free. Then I heard a quiet, insidious whisper rising above the swirling tempest. You will always be lost in my embrace. It's where you belong, it surged, laced with a cruel promise that clawed at my heart, forcing me to confront my deepest fears once more. Desperation clawed at my heart as shadows began to shift, weaving intricate stories of loss and abandonment. A theatrical display aimed to break me. "Join me," they beckoned, voice dripping with malice and empty promises. A cascade of images washed over me. Visions of lost moments, of time slipping away, and the chilling realization that the only true escape may lie in surrender. It was overwhelming, almost suffocating, and I felt myself staggering under its weight for the briefest second. But just as doubt began to seep deeper, I gripped the warmth of those memories tighter and shouted, "I will not surrender." The room shook beneath the power of my declaration, the flickering energies colliding in a light show of defiance. As the darkness began to writhe violently, I understood then. Fear might always lurk in the shadows, but it was my refusal to succumb that would keep it at bay. I wasn't alone in this fight. I had the strength of those I loved behind me. With renewed courage, I stood tall amid the bluster, facing the abyss with a fire ignited within my heart. "I declare my freedom," I yelled, the sound echoing back as a chorus of light joined my voice, crashing into the shadows with relentless force. The room erupted into a storm of brilliant colors, shadows shrieking in a cacophony of defiance. And for a moment, just a fleeting heartbeat, I felt the balance shift. Yet even with every ounce of power summoned, I knew this battle was far from over. The air thickened with tension. Every breath felt like it weighed a ton as I prepared for what would come next. The darkness writhed around me, still swirling like a tempest threatening to swallow me whole, cold and relentless. Anxiety clawed at my insides as I braced myself for its next move. In a flash, the shadows twisted and shifted, creating a vast horizon of emptiness stretching out endlessly. I could feel it creeping nearer, the weight of its presence pressing against my chest like lead. My heart thudded in my ears, a rhythmic beat of dread, as I strained to hear anything above the oppressive silence. The very foundation of this place seemed to vibrate with dark energy, and in that moment, I felt utterly trapped. Then, out of the void, a figure emerged, wavering and shifting, like smoke caught in an unseen breeze. Its face was a mask of distorted familiarity, an amalgamation of every fear I ever held. Parents, friends, everyone I'd lost. "You cannot escape the truth," it whispered, voice slithering into my ear, chilling my bones. "They left you in your darkest hour. You are alone." A shiver ran down my spine, the shadows flaring as if they fed on my fear. The figure moved closer, its gaze locking onto mine, piercing through me, exposing every insecurity. "They are gone," it hissed, tauntingly cruel. "All you have is me. Darkness is where you belong. Embrace it." Its arms reached out, fingers elongated and twisted, beckoning me towards it with a seductive allure. A surge of panic fired through me. I staggered backward, frantically shaking my head, desperation clawing at my throat. "No!" I cried, the sound erupting from my lips like a wild animal. "You're lying." But even as I shouted, cracks emerged all around me, as if the very walls of reality were splintering under the pressure of the darkness. A soft moan echoed in the chamber, the sound entwining with my thoughts, whispering promises of surrender, of release from the turmoil that churned within me. The shadows coiled tighter, wrapping around my legs like icy vines. Another voice joined the chorus, a distant echo of someone I had lost, calling out to me in a tone that made my heart ache. "Just let go," it murmured, soft and pitiful. "It's easier this way." I felt my resolve wavering, torn between the lure of comfort and the urgency of the light still flickering within. Before I could regain my composure, the ground beneath me shattered, sending me tumbling into a chasm of blackness. I fell endlessly, and the screams of the shadows amalgamated into a cacophony of despair that filled my ears. The darkness was suffocating. It clawed at my skin, hungry to consume every last glimmer of hope. Yet, just as I thought despair would swallow me whole, I felt a pull. It was the memory of laughter, of joy, echoing out into the abyss, urging me to rise again. I grasped at that flicker of light, the warmth flooding back like a beacon, refusing to let me fall into oblivion. I landed hard on solid ground, gasping for breath, surrounded by swirling darkness that now formed shapes of my worst moments. Lost opportunities, broken promises, and faces twisted in sorrow. "Leave me alone!" I shouted, feeling warmth wash over me again, igniting with the power of defiance. But the shadows conspired, intertwining and merging into something larger, something sinister. They murmured secrets, blurring the edges of my resolve. "This is your reality," they whispered. "You cannot escape." They began to advance, creeping closer, a tidal wave of malice. Desperation clawed at my throat. I clutched my chest, feeling my heart race, each beat synchronizing with the rising tide of shadows. They pulsed with a life of their own, their energy feeding off my fear. As they approached, my vision blurred, and the world spun around me. Suddenly, a piercing scream shattered the air, erupting from the suffocating shadows. It was a melding of voices, familiar yet alien, filled with anguish. "You think you can rise above?" they wailed in unison, a chilling harmony that echoed through the chamber. "You are mine. You are forever entangled in my web of darkness." The sound reverberated through me, resonating with the truth I had fought against for so long. It was a reminder that my own fears were real, tangible dangers lurking around every corner of my mind. But instead of allowing that to break me, I harnessed the flickering light inside, letting it swell and spread through my veins until it ignited every fiber of my being. "Together, we rise," I bellowed, channeling every ounce of courage I could muster. The shadows hesitated, their advance faltering just slightly in the face of my defiance. I felt the warmth of fallen memories surging, spiraling, wrapping around me like a protective barrier. The dark entity writhed in agony, contorting in on itself, the tormented faces raging against the resurgence of hope. I could no longer tell where one shadow ended and another began, yet I pressed on, my heart screaming to break free. "Do not let them win," I shouted, every word dripping with raw power. Shadows recoiled, their forms quivering in response to the strength surging forth. They twisted, forming visages of glee and terror, grotesque effigies of what I feared I might become if I allowed them to take over. Suddenly, the air around me thickened, laced with a deep, unsettling chill. The ground trembled beneath my feet, and a pulse of dark energy surged upward. It felt almost alive, hungry, yearning for my surrender. With every passing moment, the shadows morphed into memories more vivid, depicting moments of betrayal, regret, and loss, each running deeper than the last, like thorns embedding themselves in my heart. The cacophony of voices crescendoed, a tormenting allure coaxing me to yield. "Join us," they cooed, their tone a seductive remnant of every doubt I had ever harbored. "You will never be alone in our embrace. Only in the darkness do you find solace." I trembled at the promise, the tugging sensation growing more insistent. I felt the shadows slithering around me, each brush against my skin cold and invasive. Fear threatened to claw me apart, but I squared my shoulders, allowing the light in me to pulse louder, brighter. "No!" I screamed defiantly, pushing back with every fiber of my being. I refused to be consumed. The shadows recoiled, their twisted forms retreating momentarily, as if my refusal had struck a nerve, interrupting their dreadful pull. Yet the threat loomed ever larger. I could sense the entity regrouping, its malice simmering just beneath the surface. The air crackled with anticipation, my heartbeat echoing louder in my ears against the dark backdrop. Would this be enough? Would my flickering light withstand the encroaching shadow? In that breathless moment, I suddenly felt my strength give way to doubt, a debilitating weariness that swept through me like thick fog. My resolve waned, and for a heartbeat, I could almost see the shadow's promises materialize, visions of peace through surrender swirling just out of reach. But then, from the recesses of my mind emerged the brightest memories, fragments of light anchored deep within. I clung to them desperately, feeling their warmth seep through the cracks of shadow that threatened to engulf me. "You are not my master," I bellowed once more, reclaiming my power. The darkness recoiled, shrieking, contorting into unnatural shapes, faces of anguish morphing and twisting, caught between despair and rage. I felt a primal surge rush through me as I locked eyes with the encroaching mass, my heart, thrumming like a war drum, driving my fear away. "Together," I commanded, invoking the strength of every moment that had ever filled my heart with light, pushing it all forward in a brilliant explosion of hope. The shadows screamed, their forms shattering like glass, splintering into a myriad of pieces that scattered into the void. Yet even in victory, I could feel them pulling back, regrouping, a lingering menace that promised this wasn't the end. Just as I thought I had broken free, a piercing chill swept over me, seeping deep into my bones, a warning that the shadows weren't finished. How was I to fight this onslaught when the darkness had left such a heavy mark? I stood there, panting, a mixture of exhaustion and dread swelling within me. The shadows began to swirl again, thicker now, a malevolent storm rising to reclaim what was lost. I searched for the flickers of warmth, desperately willing them to stay, willing the light to push me forward again. The dark entity coalesced once more, looming larger than before, an embodiment of every fear I had ever faced. And then its voice came, a haunting melody, soft and chilling. "You cannot escape your fate, dear soul. You are mine." It slid closer, an embrace of shadows wrapping around me, promises of eternal comfort entwined with whispers of despair. My heart thundered, racing with adrenaline and fear. But as I stared into that swirling abyss, I clung tighter to the memories of joy, of fleeting moments that filled the space around me and refused to let go. "No!" I yelled defiantly, pushing against the tide of darkness. "You do not control me. I have the light, and it will never fade." The darkness shrieked in fury, twisting violently, as if my resolve had struck a blow deeper than any blade. A fierce light exploded from within, catching the dark entity off guard, sending a wave of brilliance cascading through the chamber. The shadows faltered under the intensity, twisting this way and that, shrieking a chorus of anguished cries, desperate to reclaim what they thought was theirs. I felt the ground beneath me shake, the air crack with tension as the opposing forces warred around me. Light against shadow, hope against despair. But I knew this battle was not limited to space. It stretched across time, pulling at every thread of my existence, weaving a tapestry of fear and defiance. I will fight every inch of darkness because I refuse to be a prisoner of despair. I bellowed, pouring everything I had into that moment, hoping against hope that it would be enough. Yet, even as the shadows began to buckle and retreat, I could feel the dark whispers that slithered through the air, threatening to ensnare my thoughts once more. "You cannot win," they murmured, painting pictures of anguish and regret, forcing me to relive the moments I hated the most. Each recollection tore at my heart, the voices of the lost echoing like an endless dirge. The oppressive weight of despair began to settle in again, and for a moment, I hesitated, teetering on the edge. In that hesitation, I could see the gaping maw of darkness waiting to consume me. What if I cannot fight it? I thought, uncertainty creeping back in like a dark fog. But through that darkness, the flickering light surged once more, urging me forward, wanting to break free. I clenched my fists, feeling each pulse of warmth push against the cold, a vivid reminder that I was not alone. "Together, we rise," I shouted again, my voice cutting through the veil of fear, commanding my heart to hold fast to the living light. The shadows shrieked and writhed, their forms twisting angrily as if in pain. But I pressed on, forcing every bit of warmth to bloom in that stifling darkness. You will not take me down. I will not yield. And even as the darkness clawed back, the boundaries of despair began to dissolve, crumbling under the strength of my defiance. With a final burst of emotion, I launched all the light I could muster against the ravenous shadow, a beacon of hope penetrating the tenebrous void that surrounded me. But just as I thought I might have shattered their hold, the shadows surged once more, a remnant of darkness clawing its way back to life. Something sinister prowled within the depths, a lurking threat that promised a fight beyond what I had faced. In that moment, I sensed that this struggle was just the beginning, setting the stage for a confrontation that would echo far beyond this chamber. The abyss beckoned, promising a war not just against darkness, but against the very fabric of my being. I steeled my resolve, the memories of love and laughter fortifying my spirit. I will fight, I said to myself, the words forming a mantra of determination. No matter how deep the darkness, I will rise again. With that conviction coursing through me, I prepared for whatever horrors lay ahead. The dark entity screeched, a sound recoiling within me, and I knew that what was to come would test me in ways I had yet to fathom. As shadows were swirling around me, I felt the air crackle with tension. Each shudder echoed in my bones like an approaching storm, and I knew the dark entity was gathering its power for an onslaught. A whisper of dread coiled around my heart, tightening like a noose. Suddenly, the ground trembled beneath my feet, a rumble that sent shockwaves through the very core of my being. The shadows grew darker, swirling into a vortex that seemed to scream out my name. You cannot run forever, they taunted, their voices a discordant melody that sent chills down my spine. The very walls of reality began to warp, bending and twisting, creating grotesque forms that flickered at the edges of my vision. I felt an overwhelming urge to look away, to escape that maddening sight, but my body was frozen in place, rooted by fear. Deep within the swirling shadows, distorted faces emerged, each one bearing an expression of eternal despair, eyes full of sorrow that bore into my soul. Join us, they whispered, their voices a dissonant symphony tugging at the strings of my heart. We can make the pain go away. My pulse quickened, panic clawing at the corners of my mind. I could feel the encroaching darkness yearning to envelop me, to drag me down into its depths. I took a step back, but the shadows lunged forward, thick and insidious, as if tasting my fear. I grasped the flickering light inside me tighter, calling upon those precious memories of warmth and laughter, hoping they could pierce through the dense veil of despair. "Leave me alone," I shouted, my voice fierce against the oppressive veil. The words felt small amidst the cacophony, but I summoned every ounce of strength I had. In response, the dark figures recoiled momentarily, hissing as they writhed in the ever-growing light. The shadows twisted, blending into a mass of disfigured forms that seemed almost alive, each one stretching towards me like hungry tendrils, yearning for my very essence. Then a cold wind swept through the chamber, howling like a lost soul. It chilled me to the bone, whispering secrets that chilled my blood. "You are not strong enough," it whispered, wrapping around me like a serpent. "You'll never escape the darkness." It was as if the wind carried the weight of countless lives snuffed out, each breath reeking of regret, a swirling reminder of all that had been lost. Suddenly, the shadows drew back, forming into a single, towering figure that hovered before me, its features shrouded in darkness. A low growl resonated from its depths, vibrating the ground beneath my feet. Its voice slithered through the air. "When the sun sets, you will see things for what they are. You are trapped in your own despair." As the figure loomed closer, I felt its malevolence wrap around me like chains, pulling me deeper into a sickening experience. The air shimmered ominously, and for a chilling moment, I could feel its gaze penetrating my very soul, peeling back layers of my identity, exposing my darkest fears. "You're alone, aren't you?" it asked, tauntingly. "What will you do without them?" Each word dripped with venom, forcing me to confront what I had tried so hard to bury, the isolation and grief that had almost swallowed me in the past. Memories flashed in front of my eyes of loss and loneliness, swirling in an inescapable torrent of despair. Friends who vanished, family lost to time, shadows of emotions long buried surged back, threatening to drag me down once more. But as the memories rose to consume me, I stood firm, reminding myself that I was here to confront them, to reclaim what was lost. In that moment, I took a deep breath, feeling warmth pool in my heart. They may be gone, but I am not alone, I declared, my voice steady despite the darkness swirling around me. Suddenly, the shadows recoiled, writhing in fury as if my words had cut through the gloom like a hot blade. They convulsed violently, faces contorted in pain, their cries melding into a chaotic symphony pleading for me to surrender. You can't fight forever, the entity hissed, its form distorting, flickering like a faulty light. Embrace the darkness. It is the only truth. But I remembered the flickering light within, and I channeled it, amplifying my courage despite their threats. The darkness twisted, morphing into flashes of vivid memories, each one a trap set to ensnare my mind. I saw every failure, every moment of weakness play before me, each frame filled with shame and sorrow. No, I shouted, clenching my fists. I am not defined by my past. The figure surged forward, attempting to slam into me, a wave of darkness that threatened to extinguish the light. I braced myself for impact, but just when it seemed I would be overwhelmed, I felt a surge of energy, a primal force that ignited within and exploded outward, lighting the room in brilliant flames of hope and defiance. The shadows splintered, shrieking in pain as the light expanded, pushing them back into the recesses of despair. I felt the warmth engulf me, wrapping around my heart like an embrace. But even then, I could see that flickers of the darkness remained, slithering just beyond my reach, refusing to be extinguished completely. The air crackled again, and a deeper growl came from somewhere below, rumbling like thunder. You can't quell the storm, it roared, a cacophony of shadows swirling in response. The darkness roared back, and I felt an overwhelming tide pushing against me, threatening to consume all that I had just regained. I stood my ground, anchored by the unfolding energy humming to life within me. I will not be reduced to nothing, I shouted again, my voice rising in defiance. Desperation transformed into determination as I rallied my thoughts, memories flooding back, echoes of all that I had once held dear rising to the surface, lending me strength. Yet, the darkness wasn't done. From within its depths, shadows morphed into grotesque forms of every fear I had ever faced. Each one took shape with sickening clarity and crept forward, advancing through the air like monsters from a nightmare. They flashed fiercely, a parade of terror meant to overwhelm and break my spirit. Little by little, I felt their grip tightening, slithering inwards, creeping towards the flickering flame of hope that I fought so fiercely to keep alive. I remembered their faces vividly, those I had lost to the void of time, filled with silent screams of despair. You can't escape the truth of your loss, they hissed, voices laden with malice. You're meant to be forgotten. I felt the weight of their accusations, the burn of sorrow creeping back, but this time I steeled myself. I will not let you win, I screamed, each word an anchor tethering me to the light flickering within. I inhaled deeply, allowing the warmth of every cherished memory to surge through me, fueling my resistance, igniting a beacon to pierce the enveloping shadows. The creature's form twisted violently, becoming a swirling mass of darkness splintering into myriad tendrils. Each strand writhed like a snake, curling around my limbs with an icy grip, trying to pull me back into despair. Join us, they cried in a haunting chorus, a melody wrapped in despair and longing. Feel what you truly are. In that moment, I lost sight of everything except the light blazing inside me. I fought through the suffocating darkness, my mind swirling, filled with visions of every joy, love, and laughter I had ever lived. With each flicker, my strength grew, finding power in that which I cherished, focusing every ounce of my will to turn the tide against the encompassing shadows. I pulled in a breath, letting it fill me with warmth, and with a thunderous shout, I unleashed the power of light outward, a shockwave of hope rippling through the chamber, pushing against the lurking shadows. They screamed in rage as they recoiled, their retaliatory counter-attempt paling against the brilliance of my resolve. But deep down, I could still feel them waiting, lurking, ready to shift and pounce at the first sign of my falter. They were tenacious, persistent, refusing to fade away entirely. The thought nagged at my mind as the edges of darkness began to reform, clawing their way back to the surface, twisting deviously to regain their footing. And yet I felt something shift within, a reminder that light thrives in the face of darkness, that every flicker matters, and I could choose to confront it endlessly. With each wave of shadows rising, I met it with the flood of my relentless spirit, pushing back what threatened to consume me. "Bring it on!" I roared, the words echoing like a battle cry against the suffocating void. I knew I had to keep pushing, keep creating that light until hope blazes, igniting my heart and pushing back the consuming shadows once and for all. I took another breath, feeling the energy surge stronger, weaving through my veins with fiery intensity. The shadows responded, snarling with a fury that sent tremors through the very foundations of my reality. But I wouldn't back down, not now, when victory was almost within reach. The dance of light and dark played out violently around me. I shoved my hands forward, a desperate gesture to channel all warmth towards the lurking shadows. They writhed in response, a seething mass pulling back momentarily, sensing my unwavering determination as it battered against them. And for a heartbeat, I could swear I saw the darkness falter, shrink back as though afraid of the light's relentless advance. The fractured memories of comfort's past spiraled around me, weaving a cocoon of resilience that helped me stand against the storm. Yet, even as I pushed forward, a new wave of shadows surged from the depths, dark tendrils intertwining and slithering toward me with an icy elegance. They were faster now, moving like living smoke, curling around my ankles and creeping upward along my body, wrapping tighter with each heartbeat. I felt a wave of despair wash over me as their coldness gnawed at my spirit, drawing me down toward the abyss. It was as if they were testing my resolve, looking for any crack in my defenses. "No!" I gasped, wrenching my limbs free with sheer force of will. I could feel their whispers scraping against the edges of my mind, prying at my thoughts, planting seeds of doubt. "You are nothing," they hissed in unison, their voices a sinister undertone in the ever-thickening air. "You will never escape what you are." I could see their swirling forms twist, merging into amorphous shapes of lost faces from my past, friends, loved ones, all twisted into expressions of agony, their mouths moving in silent screams. It was horror incarnate, images of regret and sorrow grinding against the walls of my sanity. There, at the forefront, was the face of someone I once knew very well, their features twisted and rotted, eyes hollowed and black as if all light within had been siphoned away. I felt a shiver race down my spine, a cold dread settling deep in my gut. "Why do you resist?" it croaked, the voice a gnarled echo of a past long buried. "You should be with us?" The figure reached towards me with skeletal fingers, and a wave of nausea rolled over me. I stumbled backward while rising in my throat. Memories flooded back, moments where I had felt helpless and alone, lost in a sea of grief and longing. How easy it would be to succumb, to let them drag me into their realm. The shadows pressed closer, the air thickening around me, pulsating with their dark energy. I could hear the sound of a heartbeat rising and falling, like a distant drum signaling the end. In that moment, a sharp clarity flashed through my mind. I had fought too hard, lost too much to let this darkness consume me. "Enough!" I screamed, lifting my chin defiantly. I will not join you. My voice felt like a spark igniting in the suffocating blackness, and I summoned every ounce of strength, not letting their illusions cloud my mind. The flicker inside me began to blaze again, a warm light that pushed against the darkness, sending out waves of golden energy. The shadows shrieked, the sound reverberating off the walls as if they were a living thing in agony. They writhed and curled, retreating from my light, faces melting back into the darkness from where they came. Yet, as I focused, I could feel the shadows' anger building, rage coiling around them like a vengeful spirit. With a roar, they lashed out, a blinding wave of black fury, a cacophony that clawed at my ears. In that moment, I felt the weight of despair wash over me like icy rain, pulling me down into a torrent of confusion. I grasped the light within me tighter, reminding myself of everything I cherished. How had I almost given in to such darkness? And then the ground shook beneath me again, a tremor that felt like a warning, and I watched as cracks began to form across the darkness, revealing glimpses of what lay beneath. A swirling void, a chilling expanse that held not just despair, but memories long forgotten. Memories I had buried deep in the recesses of my mind. In the fractures appeared distant images, moments trapped in time. A fading photograph of laughter, whispers of forgotten dreams, faces that were once warm and familiar now turned to ash. Look at what you've lost, the shadows crooned, their sinister cadence echoing through the air, weaving a tapestry of loss and regret that wrapped tighter around my heart. Before I could react, I felt myself pulled toward one of the cracks, as if something deep within me was yearning to peek into that void. The shadows danced enticingly, beckoning me closer, filling the air with sweet whispers of promises unfulfilled. Join your past, they urged, their amusement palpable, and forget this endless struggle. Stop, I cried, my voice cracking under the weight of their manipulation. The whispers scratched at my heart, each syllable cutting deeper than the last. They were molding my love into sorrow, crafting my dreams into nightmares. I fought against it, feeling my resolve waver momentarily. But then I remembered the beacon of light pulsing steadily within me. Through sheer force of will, I pushed through the onslaught. I choose my path, I shouted, my voice rising above the turmoil as I stepped back from the void, refusing to let the shadows pull me in. The darkness shrieked, the sound vibrating through the very air around me, and I felt the shadows recoil, their power challenged for the first time. But they wouldn't concede so easily. With renewed fury, they gathered into a swirling mass, a vicious cyclone of despair that threatened to engulf me. This is your final hour, they roared, their heavy presence a suffocating weight. You cannot hold on forever. I clenched my fists, letting the adrenaline surge through me like fire. Watch me, I shot back, calling upon every ounce of light, spinning it outwards in a desperate attempt to shield myself from the approaching storm. The air crackled as I burst forth with an explosion of radiant energy, a wave that radiated from my core, illuminating the dark haven. The shadows screeched, their cacophony a symphony of pain and rage, forcing their forms to scatter. For a fleeting moment, I felt a surge of triumph as I watched them retreat. But the victory was short-lived. The vortex began to churn violently, and I knew they weren't defeated, merely regrouping, plotting their revenge. The darkness swirled, and a voice, low and venomous, slithered through the air, laden with malice. This isn't over, it whispered. You may hold the light now, but it drips with fear and uncertainty. We will return. A cold shiver ran through me as I sensed it, a foreboding that settled heavily on my heart. The shadows began to reform, their tendrils thickening, twisting together into something monstrous, a grotesque figure that writhed in anger and frustration. It loomed over me, a massive silhouette that absorbed the surrounding light, consuming every flicker of warmth I fought to maintain. Suddenly, a surge of cold air whipped around me, wrapping me in a chilling embrace that stole my breath away. I staggered back, the icy fingers of despair clawing at my throat. "Fight all you want," it rasped, the entity's presence heavy and foreboding. "All you do is prolong the inevitable." I tried to push past the fear, to fight against the encroaching shadows, but it felt like quicksand, pulling me down inch by inch. The room grew darker, and panic clawed at my insides like a wild animal trapped in a cage. Would I be able to hold on? Would I stand firm against this monstrous force? In the depths of my mind, I felt the flickering light within waning, slowing, like a candle struggling against the wind. I focused, wanting to widen that flame, letting my love and hope course through me like life's blood. "Can't you see?" I screamed at the mass, finding some semblance of bravery. "You will never defeat me. I will always push back." The shadows roared, a guttural noise, as if my words struck a chord of fury within them. They darted forward, wrapping around my limbs, dragging me unwillingly toward that yawning chasm in the ground. With a desperate, primal scream, I planted my feet firmly on the ground, tapping into every ounce of strength, every cherished memory that buoyed my spirit. "I refuse to be your prey," I bellowed, refusing to succumb to the darkness clutches. The light within me flared as I pushed against the pole, feeling the shadows begin to falter, the wails of anguish echoing through the chamber. But just as I thought I was turning the tide, I felt a piercing pain deep in my chest. It was like a dagger driven into my heart, sharp and unforgiving. I gasped, looking down in horror to see darkness seeping into my skin, a creeping infection that threatened to spread. The cold touch of the shadows tightened their grip, forcing me back toward despair. Time slowed in that moment, and I staggered beneath the weight of anguish. My heart raced, panic flooding me as I battled against the sensation of defeat that gripped me. "No, not like this," I shrieked, but my voice faded against the chorus of shadows that laughed in triumph. Their twisted forms danced around me, encasing me in darkness, the laughter hollow and mocking. "This will always be your fate," they whispered, full of sinister glee. "You cannot escape my embrace." With everything I had left, I dug deep, feeling a pulse of energy reignite within, fueled by every time I had fought before, every victory, every moment of love and light. I wouldn't let this moment define me. Summoning a final burst of courage, I focused that energy into one last desperate stand, a beacon meant to pierce through the dark. "Get away from me," I roared, the ground trembling beneath the weight of my declaration. I hurled that blazing light into the vortex swirling around me, feeling it expand, enveloping everything back into warmth. The shadows screamed, a cacophony of rage and fear, as the force of my will exploded outward. The darkness began to disintegrate, fracturing like glass, scattering pieces across the air. I felt the energy surge, the warmth expanding and pulling me back from the brink, lifting me beyond the chaos. With the light burning brightly around me, I felt myself rising, emerging from the suffocating shadow, fueled by the hope that refused to be extinguished. The darkness writhed and shrieked, but I pressed on, willing all doubts and fears to dissipate into nothingness, to be swept away into the growing light. Yet, even as I soared beyond the clutches of despair, I could still sense that lingering presence, a remnant of darkness holding fast just beneath. The struggle wasn't over, and I knew this was merely a pause in an ongoing battle, but I felt stronger now. I had faced the shadows, unflinching even when fear threatened to derail me. With that realization, I took a deep breath, steadying myself for whatever lay ahead, a burning resolve igniting in my heart as I stepped into the light, ready for whatever the darkness would throw at me next. But the air felt different, thick with anticipation. Even as I felt stronger, a cold shiver ran down my spine, foreboding like a dark cloud looming overhead. I could sense a pulse in the chaos, something watching, something waiting, just beyond the veil of light I had conjured. The shadows writhed at the edges, coiling like serpents, whispering sweet nothings that crawled into my mind. You think you have one? They crooned, their voices slithering through the gaps of my defenses. We will always be here, lurking in the corners of your memories, feeding on your fears. I clenched my fists, fighting back the chill creeping into my heart. You are nothing, I shouted defiantly, but uncertainty seeped through my resolve. What if they were right? What if this light was just a flicker, a brief distraction from the encroaching darkness? The ground beneath me quaked again, and I stumbled, nearly losing my balance. I couldn't shake the feeling that the shadows were gathering strength, biding their time, just waiting for the right moment to pounce. I strained my ears, heart racing, trying to decipher the sounds around me. They grew louder, a chaotic symphony of despair, swirling and coiling like smoke around me. Deep breaths, I told myself. I had faced them before, but each breath felt like it was getting harder to take, like the very air was thickening with dread. I remembered the faces of those I had lost. Their silent screams echoed in my soul. Then the walls of my sanctuary began to pulse, thumping in time with my racing heart, a sinister rhythm that felt alive, almost hungry. Let us in, they coaxed sweet as honey, trailing spectral fingers along the edges of my consciousness. You cannot fight forever. Surrender to the darkness. It will welcome you. Suddenly, I was surrounded by a cloak of darkness, thick and suffocating. A shadowy figure curled around me, its breath a chilling whisper against my skin. Feel it, the truth of your despair. It hissed, and in that moment, I was pulled into a memory. The scene shifted and whirled like a movie reel, pulling me into a past I had tried to forget. I stood in a room filled with laughter, once warm and inviting, now a ghostly remnant of something beautiful. Faces I loved flashed before me, smiling, carefree. But that joy dulled as I saw the shadows creeping into their eyes. Join them, the whispers teased, urging me to backtrack, to sink into the fog of nostalgia. I felt myself teetering on the edge of oblivion, memories threatening to drown me in sadness. You will never know this happiness again, they sang, a haunting lullaby meant to soothe and suffocate. I won't go back, I screamed, the protest bursting from my lips like a bullet. Adrenaline surged, warning bells ringing in the depths of my mind. With a sudden thrust, I forced my way back into the present, knocking the shadows away like a swarm of gnats. But as soon as I broke free, another shape emerged from the swirling void, a massive figure, darker than any shadow, rising before me. It was cloaked in form-fitting blackness, features obscured, yet so ominously familiar. My heart sank as the realization hit. It was me, a twisted, warped version of myself brought forth from the darkest corners of my being. This reflection wore a cruel smile, lips curling with malevolence. You think you have escaped us? It rumbled, the voice echoing deep within me, resonating with every insecurity I had. I am the part of you that you cannot deny, the darkness that lives within. With every word, it drew closer, the air shimmering with its vile energy. I felt a rush of panic. No, you're not me, I shouted, desperate to distance myself from this entity. But it only laughed, a chilling sound that sent another shiver coursing through my veins. The darkness coiled tighter around me, wrapping itself around my throat, suffocating me slowly. You've fought valiantly, but it's time to give in. Look at the path you've walked, filled with failures and despair. Join me, and we'll be whole again. I could feel it tugging at my heart, trying to lure me into sweet surrender. Memories of sorrow flashed in my mind, regrets swelling like tides, each wave threatening to pull me under. But I fought back, clawing at the tendrils wrapping around me, willing myself to confront this grotesque image. No, I cried, the word escaping like a desperate plea. I refuse to let you define me. I am more than this darkness. The shadowy form flickered for a moment, confusion playing across its features. But then it regained its composure with an overwhelming surge of rage. You can't escape what you really are, it spat, and shards of darkness fired at me. slicing through the air like knives. I ducked just in time, my body moving instinctively to dodge its onslaught. But their power was undeniable. I could feel the despair creeping back in, clawing at my limbs, filling me with dread. What if there is no escaping it? Then an idea struck me, a faint thread of hope woven into my fear. If they thrived on memories of sorrow and pain, maybe I could turn that against them. Gathering every ounce of strength, I focused on the light within me once more. Maybe you are right, I said, my voice steady despite the chaos swirling around me. But my light can transform even the darkest memories. One of the shadows hesitated, uncertainty flickering across its body. What are you talking about? It hissed, gathering its strength. I closed my eyes tightly, pictures from my past swirling fast behind my eyelids, each one filled with love and warmth. I pushed against the darkness enveloping me, willing the light to break free, to shine through. I'll show you. With a quick motion, I thrust my hands forward, unleashing a radiant burst of energy, a blinding light that pushed outward in all directions. The darkness shrieked, their forms twisting in agony as the light flooded into every shadowed corner. They wavered, the tendrils of shadow flickering and dissolving, faces of torment and anger melting under the force of my resurgence. The shadow of myself faltered, confusion marring its cruel smile. This isn't possible, it roared, but I could feel its strength dwindling, the darkness unraveling at the seams. Each flicker of light I created pulled me closer to reality, to the strength within. One by one, the memories of love and laughter overpowered the shadows, pushing away the darkness that clung to me like a second skin. I pressed on, focusing on the moments that defined my joy, letting the warmth seep through my veins as I spread that light with reckless abandon. The shadows thrashed, their forms losing cohesion, their whispers now panic-stricken, morphing into desperate cries for help. But as I felt their grasp slipping, I was struck with one final, unsettling realization. Even as the shadows faded, there would always be a tiny fragment that remained, a whisper lurking forever in the depths of my psyche. They would retreat, but I knew they weren't gone entirely. The thought was heavy, but I had gained a clarity over my own strength, a powerful weapon against them. I may never be rid of you completely, I said breathily, but I control my choices. I'll remember, and I'll fight. The last remnants of darkness shrieked as they melted into wisps of shadow, evaporating like morning mist. I felt the cold grip fade, the air around me warming, opening up to the light that had always been a part of me, a part one would fiercely defend. Yet even with the shadows gone, I could still feel that chilled presence lingering just beyond the door of my consciousness, ever watchful, an echo of the battle I had just fought. Every struggle is a victory, every pain a lesson, I whispered, but I knew that even as I stepped forward into the light, shadows waited patiently for a moment of weakness to creep back in. Stepping back into my reality was both a relief and an unsettling reminder of the ever-present darkness. As I peered into the distance, I could feel the unsettling tension, suggesting the battle was not yet won. The gust of wind swept through, swirling the fallen leaves around my feet, scattering remnants of the fight I had just endured, whispering in my ears. This isn't over, and although I emerged from the darkness, the shadows still lingered, twisting behind me like smoke, ever persistent and waiting. I took a deep breath, steeling myself for whatever came next, knowing the path of light would forever be a double-edged sword against the shadows yearning to regain their hold. As I walked forward, I could feel the chill creeping back, a sense of foreboding wrapping around me like a heavy cloak, an unsettling reminder that even in the comfort of light, darkness had not been vanquished. I forged on, heart racing, mind alert, prepared to face whatever nightmares lurked in the shadows, knowing I must always be vigilant. The struggle against the dark would continue, and I was ready to meet it head-on. Even as the air thrummed with something vile, a reminder that not all wounds heal completely. And how I wished I could shake that feeling of someone watching, waiting for that breath of doubt. Perhaps for another moment when light faltered. When could they seize the opportunity to creep back in, ready to consume everything I held dear? The struggle against the dark would continue, and I was ready to meet it head-on. Even as the air thrummed with something vile, a reminder that not all wounds heal completely. Each step I took felt heavier, the ground beneath me shifting like it held secrets of its own. Dread crept back into my heart, whispering doubts in the corners of my mind. Shadows lay waiting among the flickering lights, lurking on the periphery, reminding me that my battle was far from over. The trees around me stood tall and foreboding, their branches twisting like gnarled fingers reaching out, trying to snag anything that ventured too close. Miles stretched ahead, dark and uninviting, a path littered with the remnants of my previous encounter. I could feel their eyes on me, watchful, eager, filled with a hunger I couldn't shake. As I strode deeper into the woods, an unsettling rustle in the underbrush sent a jolt of panic through me. My heart raced as I stopped, scanning the shadows, searching for movement among the leaves. "You're just being paranoid," I whispered to myself, but the feeling gnawed at my insides. I moved cautiously, each step deliberate, trying to shake off the sensation of being followed. I could sense something lurking just beyond the tree line, watching my every move. Insects buzzed eerily around me, their sounds amplified in the thick silence, and the sunlight struggled to break through the dense branches overhead, leaving streaks of darkness that danced unsettlingly along the ground. Then, in a chilling moment, I caught a glimpse of a figure darting between the trees, an outline that vanished as quickly as it appeared. Cold sweat dripped down my back as I froze, staring into the shadows. I couldn't tell if it was real or just my imagination, conjured up by fear creeping back in. The air was heavy, charged with an electricity that buzzed in my ears, the anticipation of something sinister lurking just out of sight. "Hello," I called out, my voice trembling against the silence. The word was swallowed by the woods, echoing into nothingness. I listened intently, every rustle in the leaves sending my pulse racing, my instincts screaming that I was not alone. Then, out of the corner of my eye, I spotted something glimmering on the ground. Cautiously, I approached, heart pounding as the object gradually revealed itself. The remnants of a shattered mirror, pieces glistening in sunlight like jagged teeth among the dirt. I knelt to examine it, and my breath caught as I caught a glimpse of my reflection. But it wasn't just me looking back. Another face flickered in and out of focus, an echo of the shadow I had battled earlier, its empty eyes watching me with a cruel sense of satisfaction. "You're getting closer to the truth," it taunted, its voice chillingly familiar, dancing on the air like smoke. I gasped, scrambling backward, my heart thundering in my chest. The reflection shifted, showing not only my distorted image, but also a swirl of darkness encroaching from the edges, creeping closer, threatening to consume everything I held within. Frantically, I dug my fingers into the ground, trying to anchor myself, reminding myself that I had come this far. "This isn't real," I yelled, my voice strained as I pushed against the looming dread. But doubt seeped in, clawing at my insecurities, feeding off the fear pulsating in the atmosphere. The air began to chill, a frosty breath wrapping around me, pulling the temperature down to a bone-deep cold. The shadows around me lengthened, growing thicker, swirling like a storm at my feet. It felt as if the very ground was alive, trembling in anticipation of what was to come. And then, from the depths of the darkness, laughter erupted, a high-pitched, gleeful cackle that sliced through the silence like a blade. I staggered back, raising to my feet, feeling the glass shard dig into my palm, a painful reminder that I wasn't dreaming. "Get out!" I shouted, my voice breaking, echoing in the eerie emptiness. I turned to run, but a sense of dread anchored me, my legs refusing to move. The shadows twisted into a funnel, swirling around me like a whirlpool, threatening to drag me into their depths. "You can't escape your fate," they sang, the voices layered. mocking, taunting. Their tones vibrated in my bones, weaving through the air like a sinister melody, buoying around with a grotesque harmony that sent shivers coursing through my spine. I closed my eyes, struggling to focus my thoughts. "I'm stronger than this," I murmured, repeating it like a mantra, willing the darkness to recede. With every heartbeat, I felt my courage flicker like a flame, battling against the oncoming waves. I took a deep breath, forcing myself to open my eyes and face the entity coiling around me. "I'm not going to be your prey," I shouted, and with that, I thrust my hands forward, expelling what light remained within me. I envisioned it swirling outward, a radiant force meant to shatter the suffocating shadows. But something shifted, a weight hung heavily in the air, and as the light pierced through the dark, it unveiled a horrific sight that twisted my stomach. The shadows revealed tortured faces trapped within, their mouths opening in silent screams, eyes wide with pain. They reached out, fingers stretching toward me, begging for release. The realization struck me like a blow. I wasn't fighting just for myself. The darkness I faced cradled the anguish of those who had suffered before me, and it thrived on their despair. It became clear that in fighting back, I was not only battling my own fear, but carrying the weight of countless souls yearning for liberation. "Stop!" I screamed, the word torn from my throat, desperation clawing its way back in. "I won't let you take me." My resolve shimmered, and I envisioned the light surging through every crevice of darkness, a beacon meant to free those trapped within the void. It surged with intensity, illuminating the depths of the shadows and revealing the faces of the lost, their expressions shifting from anguish to hope as the light wrapped around them. They began to emerge, flickering like fading echoes, becoming tangible as if my very spirit stirred their essence. "Come with me," I called, my voice regaining strength, resonating with a power I didn't know I possessed. "We can break free together." The tendrils of darkness writhed and shrieked, but the shimmering light held fast, pushing against the suffocating weight that threatened to drag me down. I felt the power coursing through me as those faces brushed against my spirit like a warm touch, their gratitude instilling courage in my heart. But just as hope began to surge within, I sensed a darkness deep beneath, a pulse of malevolence rising like a tide. The shadows coiled tighter, trying to pull back their lost souls, a desperate attempt to consume the light. I could feel their anger, almost palpable, vibrating against my chest like an unending storm. "Do not fight it," the voice hissed again, more furious now, echoing around me like a thunderclap. "You think your light can extinguish my reign? You are unworthy of its power." In that instant, a fresh wave of shadows crashed down on me, slamming into my defenses with a shattering force that swept me off my feet. I felt the light flicker, wavering under their onslaught, the weight of despair drenching my spirit like cold rain. Panic clawed at my throat as the ruthless darkness swallowed the faces I had tried to save. I could hear their cries echoing in the air, fading into despair, and it struck me. If I let this fear overpower me, I might lose them forever. I could not fail. I refused to let darkness claim yet another victim. Gathering all the energy I had left, I focused on the light once more, pulling it tightly around me like a cocoon. With a fierce determination, I thrust it outward again, forcing the spectral arms to snap away from those in agony, fighting for freedom. The shadows shrieked and writhed, and I felt the pulse of their fury clash against my light, but I was relentless. "You may cling to the dark, but it's my light that will shine through this night." Suddenly, a brilliant flash erupted from my core, illuminating the surrounding woods in radiant warmth. The barriers between light and shadow shattered, streams of light cascading down like rain. The darkness writhed in agony, those trapped souls breaking free, swirling in a chaotic dance around me before merging into the light, pushing back against the shadowy vortex. As I watched those lost souls emerge one by one, their faces glowing with expression, hope, relief, gratitude, I felt a rush of warmth engulf me, a tidal wave of strength. In their unity, I found my resolve solidifying. The shadows twisted in furious defiance, but I was no longer alone in this fight. Together with those I had saved, we formed a collective force that surged with light, pushing against every ounce of darkness that threatened to consume us. The echoes of their voices rang clear in my mind, each one a testament to survival, a promise to reclaim their lives. We will not let fear control us, I roared, and in that moment, I felt invincible. The light blazed brighter, enveloping the sinister shadows, igniting within them a searing pain that seemed to amplify beyond comprehension. Their forms began to fracture, flaring like embers fading into the dark, and laughter, a sinister, echoing laughter, turned into panicked wails that reverberated through the air. With my heart pounding, eyes wide, I pushed forward, aware that I would always carry a part of the darkness I had faced. But now, I had learned that it would not define me. I embraced the light with every fiber of my being, ready to face whatever would come next as the shadows crumbled into dust. But then, just as I thought victory was mine, a thunderous rumble rolled through the ground, shaking the earth beneath my feet. A deeper darkness surged forth, more powerful, more menacing than I had ever imagined, and a chilling realization gripped me. This fight was only beginning. I felt the ground tremble beneath me, the air charged with an unsettling energy that made my skin crawl. Shadows crept in from every angle, the darkness coiling tighter, whispering threats like serpents ready to strike. The glowing warmth I had just summoned flickered, teetering on the edge of extinction, and for a moment, a paralyzing fear surged within me. Had I truly thought I had conquered the dark? A deep rumbling echoed through the forest, as if the very earth beneath me was awakening, and I knew that something far more sinister was awakening. The shadows took form, swirling into shapes that resembled grotesque figures, their elongated limbs twitching as though they had a life of their own. They crawled toward me, each movement sending shivers down my spine. I could feel their breath, chilly and rancid, as if long-forgotten spirits were exhaling the remnants of their sorrow. I staggered back, my heart racing, trying not to succumb to the paralyzing panic gripping my chest. A thick fog began to roll in, enveloping everything in a suffocating blanket of gray. I tried to shout out, to cry out for help, but my voice got snatched away like fallen leaves in a whirlwind. With each step I took, I felt an invisible hand gripping my ankle, dragging me into the fog, pulling me back down into the abyss. Memories flashed in my mind, faces of those I'd lost intertwined with the shadows, gasping as they suffocated within the gloom that seeped through the cracks in my resolve. Then I saw them, a crowd of faceless figures emerging from the fog, their bodies cloaked in darkness that moved like liquid. They reached for me, fingers stretched out as though pleading and threatening at once. I felt a chill run down my spine as I recognized one of them. The twisted visage of my own dark counterpart, the shadow that had haunted my earlier fight, now twisted with rage. "You thought you could defeat me," it hissed, an unholy glee lacing its voice. "You're just fueling my return." The air thickened, a toxic miasma swirling around me, trying to suffocate the light I had forged. I realized it wanted to break my spirit. The faces of the lost began to merge into the shadows, swallowed by the vile darkness, and my breath quickened as despair clawed its way back into my chest. The energy I'd harnessed felt almost extinguished, flickering like a dying candle fighting against the wind. Yet even in that moment, something deep within me refused to disappear into utter despair. Was I really going to let my fears consume me? I closed my eyes, grasping at the remnants of every spark of hope. "You can't take me," I yelled out, my voice ringing with defiance against the chaos swirling around. I could feel the warmth starting to rise within again, a flicker igniting, fighting against the darkness pressing against me. "Together, we can hold the darkness at bay," I bellowed, summoning the spirits trapped in the shadows, urging them to join me in my fight. And for the first time, they responded, their faces filled with determination as they surged around me, merging their old energy with my newfound strength. The glow brightened, illuminating the darkness that sought to swallow me whole. But the shadow wraith snarled, its form twisting and bending like smoke fleeing from a flame. I could see it gathering the darkness around it, turning the fog into a weapon, whirling shapes and shadows glimmering with malevolence. "We are stronger together," it screeched, a cacophony of hisses rising like an orchestra of chaos. The shadows I had set loose were now swirling into a formulation of cruelty, a tempest that threatened to engulf everything I fought for. The screaming voices grew louder, filling my head with torment, drowning out everything but their despair. Yet within that cacophony, I found clarity. I grasped all the souls surrounding me, their desperate cries transforming into a powerful chant, harmonizing with my own. The warmth surged within me, growing stronger, funneled into an unstoppable force ready to break free. I opened my eyes, locked gazes with the abyss, and let the light explode from my being, a wave of radiant energy surging forth in a brilliant pulse. The shadows quaked as it met the darkness, the air crackling with a fierce energy that felt like a tempest unleashed. The figures of the lost began to flicker around me, fighting to break free from their chains, while the dark forms of my enemy lurched backward, howling in pain. In that moment, the woods became a battlefield, a swirling clash of light and shadow, echoing with the cries of those who had been lost to darkness and the victorious choruses of those rising against it. I could see fragments of hope taking form, appearing as silhouettes in the fighting, no longer faceless. "Together," I shouted, my voice rising above the chaos, "we will break the curse." The glow intensified, illuminating everything in a fierce light, casting shadows back into their hiding places. The laughter turned to screams, the very essence of darkness boiling away in the force of our collective will. The twisted figure of my dark self wavered, its cruel grin morphing into pure rage as it dissolved into a mist of sorrow. Finally, with one last surge of energy, the darkness shattered, splintering into millions of tiny fragments, bursting like a dam, giving way to a flood of sunlight. The air cleared, and the world I had fought for emerged from the murky void of despair, blooming into brilliance, the laughter of souls freed from chains ringing like celestial chimes. And then, the haunting darkness faded, leaving only echoes of its presence behind. I stood there, gasping for breath, empty and filled in the same instance. The souls surrounding me shimmered brightly, their once tormented faces now beaming with happiness. I had faced the shadows within myself and the shared darkness of the world around me, and somehow I had emerged victorious. While the dark might lurk around the edges, whispering threats, I no longer feared its grasp. I had embraced light, and it would forever guide me through the lingering uncertainty. But even in my newfound resolve, as I turned to leave the remnants of that haunted place behind, the air felt heavy with something still simmering beneath the surface. A dark whisper slithered through the trees, promising that shadows would watch, biding their time for their next move. I couldn't shake the feeling that the fight might never truly end, that I would always have to be cautious of the darkness lurking just beyond the light. But I also knew now that I held the strength, the light, to face whatever shadows dared to come back.